worthless wood lizard that only eats leaves. Does it deserve to waste my premium meat feed? A combat boot studded with iron nails slammed down hard. Mud splattered all over Bai Xiaochuan's face. Bai Xiaochuan's beast companion, the wood lizard, was pinned firmly into the mire, letting out faint whimpers. Bai Xiaochuan ground his teeth tightly. Behind Wang Meng stood a shadowy black leopard as tall as an adult human. The leopard was greedily tearing apart chunks of meat on the ground. What? You want to take a bite out of me? Wang Meng let out a sneer and twisted his foot downward violently. Crack! The wood lizard's spine snapped. Get a clear look at where you are. This is the alien beast island. 10,000 students from our school were dropped onto this hellish place. Your beast companion is your life. My Black Panther is Black Iron 3-star. Your useless lizard isn't even 1-star. It's just wasting air by being alive. More than a dozen students huddled nearby, none daring to utter a word. Brother Meng, the meat's all gone. A lackey sidled over with a fawning expression. Just filling our bellies isn't enough. We need some entertainment too. Wang Meng lifted his foot and turned his gaze to his left. Several sports students were pinning a girl down firmly. The girl wore a tattered dance uniform, her fair skin covered in mud and filth. This was Chu Linger, the top dancer of the dance department. She clutched her collar tightly, her voice trembling. Let go of me. Don't touch me. Wang Meng stepped forward and pinched Chu Linger's chin harshly. That bug of yours can't even chew through leaves. When the corpse tide hits tonight, what will you rely on to survive? Come into my tent and cooperate with me nicely, and I'll guarantee you stay alive. Tears welled up in Chu Linger's eyes. She turned her head away. Dream on. I'd rather die than go. Bitch, you don't know when you're well off. Wang Meng's face darkened, and he raised his hand sharply, ready to slap her. Bai Xiaochuan had originally planned to stay out of this trouble. After all, he could barely protect his own lizard right now. But just then, a scorching sensation like electric current surged up his spine and crashed into his forehead. Ding! The Creation Entry Touch Lottery System has been activated. High Attractiveness / High Fate Target detected. Chu Linger Attractiveness Score. 96 Extraction Requirement. Sustained physical contact lasting over 30 seconds. Reminder, the higher the favorability and the longer the contact duration, the higher the quality of the extracted entry. Entries can be bestowed upon beast companions unconditionally. Bai Xiaochuan lifted his head abruptly. His gaze swept over the dying wood lizard on the ground. There was no time to hesitate. He had to survive on this island. He charged forward like a desperate beast. Boom! He rammed into the unprepared Wang Meng. Then, amid the stunned stares of the onlookers, he wrapped one arm around Chu Linger's waist and pulled her tightly into his embrace. Her figure felt slender beneath his hand. Socially awkward and blunt by nature, Bai Xiaochuan blurted out his honest thought without thinking. Your waist is so narrow. Do you skip meals often? It's a little thin. Chu Linger's eyes widened. Her body stiffened completely, her mind going blank. A countdown began to race on the system panel. Extraction progress. 29 seconds, 28 seconds. The surrounding crowd fell silent for a second before bursting into loud laughter. Wang Meng clutched his stomach and roared with laughter. Damn, has this kid lost his mind out of fear? He's staring death in the face, and he's taking the chance to harass the school beauty? Chu Linger snapped back to her senses, her cheeks flushing bright red. She instinctively tried to push Bai Xiaochuan away. But instead of loosening his grip, he held her even tighter, unconsciously squeezing gently. Don't move. I'm doing this to save you. Only a few seconds left. Chu Linger shuddered. The urge to struggle faded, halted dead by those words. She looked up and met Bai Xiaochuan's eyes. There was no lechery in his gaze, only icy calculation. Extraction progress. 3 seconds, 2 seconds. Wang Meng finished laughing, the flesh on his face twitching. Enough of your petty harassment. Black Panther, tear that useless lizard's head off. As for this lunatic, break his limbs and throw him out to the wolves. Roar. The shadowy black leopard blurred into a streak and lunged toward the wood lizard on the ground. Wang Meng balled up his large fist and charged forward, aiming straight for Bai Xiaochuan's face. Chu Linger screamed and squeezed her eyes shut. At the very last moment before the fist landed, dazzling purple light exploded in Bai Xiaochuan's mind. Ding! 30 seconds reached. Extraction successful. Congratulations to host for triggering a transcendental critical hit. Extracted purple rare entry. Thorn counterattack absolute toxin. Bestow upon beast companion immediately. Bestow. Bai Xiaochuan roared inwardly. Whoosh. A streak of purple light surged into the wood lizard's body. At the same time, Wang Meng's fist was inches away. Bai Xiaochuan knew no combat techniques, but he possessed reckless, desperate ferocity. Gritting his teeth, he lurched forward and slammed his forehead hard into Wang Ming's face. This was an all-or-nothing exchange of injuries. Boom. Shit. Wang Ming held in agony. His nasal bone snapped instantly, blood streaming down his face. Bai Xiaochuan's vision blurred from the impact. A gash split his forehead, and blood quickly stained half his face. He stumbled backward a step and spat out blood-tinged saliva. That really hurts. As soon as he spoke, the shadowy black leopard reached the wood lizard and sank its fangs into its neck. Clang! The leopard's sharp teeth collided with purple crystal scales and snapped clean off. Before it could react, sharp barbs jutted out from the armor plates, piercing its oral cavity. The black leopard screeched and let go. The wood lizard's original pale green scales transformed piece by piece into dark purple crystal armor, lined with razor-sharp barbs tipped with eerie emerald green venom. It slowly opened its eyes, vertical dark golden irises locking onto the shadowy black leopard. The wood lizard's body suddenly expanded. Its limbs thickened, its spine arched upward, and bony spikes jutted out along its tail. The frail reptile had instantly transformed into a fierce beast clad in purple crystal armor. Hiss! It bit down onto the leopard's foreleg, injecting venom through its fangs. The leopard's flesh blackened rapidly, melting away like snow under boiling water, black blood dripping from its bones. Ugh! The leopard rolled wildly, its shrill cries stinging everyone's eardrums. Black Panther! Wang Ming clutched his broken nose, panic finally setting in. He tried to rush forward, but Bai Xiaochuan had recovered. Bai Xiaochuan fought through dizziness and kicked hard at the side of Wang Ming's knee. Crack! The clear sound of breaking bone echoed out. Ugh! Wang Ming lost his balance and crashed heavily into the muddy ground. The dozen students who had been watching fell dead silent in an instant. The 3 sports students scrambled backward, terrified that Bai Xiaochuan would turn on them next. Chu Linger forgot to breathe. She stared at the blood-covered youth with the split forehead. Her hand still hovered near her collar, frozen mid-movement. Bai Xiaochuan's face twitched from the pain, yet he stood ramrod straight. As long as he remained standing, none of these people dared to continue their rampage. What did you do? Wang Ming snarled upward, his eyes filled with disbelief. My Black Panther is Black Iron 3-star. How could that useless lizard beat it? Cheating. You must have cheated. Bai Xiaochuan wiped blood from his face. When he lowered his hand, blood dripped between his fingers into the mud. He looked down at the kneeling Wang Ming, his voice calm. Wood lizard. Hiss. Purple light flickered. The wood lizard dragged the shadowy black leopard and charged straight to Wang Ming. It opened its venom-dripping jaws, and a wave of foul toxic mist washed over Wang Ming. Wang Ming's shouts died in his throat. His face turned deathly pale, his body shaking uncontrollably. Brother Bai, I'm sorry. I was only joking earlier. I'll return the meat. I'll give you everything I have. No need. Bai Xiaochuan stared at him. The meat's already been eaten by the leopard. He nodded toward the rotting black leopard on the ground, his tone solemn. The sight makes me furious. Lizard, cripple him. Wang Ming's pupils shrank. Don't. Bai Xiaochuan. You can't. Before he could finish speaking, the barbs on the lizard's tail stabbed into the mud. Purple vine like toxic thorns burst from the ground, tangling Wang Ming's limbs instantly. Crack! Crack! Bones snapped one after another. Wang Ming's screams cut off abruptly, and he collapsed onto the mud like a sack of broken limbs. The wood lizard grabbed Wang Ming by the collar, dragged the half-dead black leopard alongside, and vanished into the misty rainforest. Bai Xiaochuan made no move to stop it. He slowly unclenched his fists only after the 2 figures vanished completely, his palms slick with cold sweat. Ding! Warning! Due to the overwhelmingly powerful fusion of the entry, your beast companion is undergoing genetic restructuring. Predicted evolution time, midnight tonight. The beast companion will evolve into an entirely new species. Bai Xiaochuan's heart skipped a beat. A single purple entry could restructure genes? If he obtained entries of higher grades, could he completely alter its species? He nearly laughed aloud, forcing his expression calm, pretending he had foreseen everything, while his mind raced with calculations. If a purple entry was this formidable, just how overpowering would golden or rainbow tier entries be? Bai Xiaochuan turned and headed toward his run-down wooden hut. He paused as he passed Chu Linger. She still stood rooted to the spot. Traces of blush lingered on her cheeks, and her gaze never left him. Bai Xiaochuan grew uncomfortable under her stare. He cleared his throat and hardened his expression on purpose. Aren't you leaving? Chu Linger blinked in confusion. Bai Xiaochuan nodded toward the misty rainforest, waiting for another troublemaker to come harass you. Chu Linger snapped back to reality. She bit her lower lip, lifted her mud-soaked skirt, and hurried to follow him. A low beast roar echoed from deep within the rainforest. Bai Xiaochuan paused and glanced back. Mist swirled thickly, obscuring everything. He frowned briefly, then stepped into the wooden hut. No one noticed. Deep inside the rainforest, a bloodied hand slowly curled around a rotting tree trunk. Inside the wooden hut, campfire crackled. Bai Xiaochuan squatted beside the pile of dry grass, watching intently as the wood lizard shed its skin. Pale cyan light flowed across its body. Bulges appeared beneath its old hide now and then, and the grating sound of shifting bones set teeth on edge. Evolution countdown. 2 hours 15 minutes, still more than 2 hours left. Bai Xiaochuan stretched out a hand, then pulled it back, afraid of disrupting the evolution process. In the corner, Chu Linger curled up with her knees drawn to her chest. Her damp dance uniform clung to her body, yet she paid no mind to covering herself. She alternated her gaze between Bai Xiaochuan and the evolving lizard. Her eyes held fear and quiet suspicion. Bai Xiaochuan felt prickles along his back under her unwavering stare. Fighting Wang Ming was one thing. Being stared at like this by a girl was far more uncomfortable than taking a punch. Why are you staring at me? He turned his head away, his tone stiff. Do I have flowers growing on my face? Chu Linger bit her lower lip. After a long moment of gathering courage, she stood slowly and walked over to Bai Xiaochuan. Thud. She knelt on the ground before him. Bai Xiaochuan flinched backward half a step. What are you doing? I want to survive. Chu Linger looked up at him, speaking slowly and deliberately. Even without Wang Ming, others like him will come. My beast companion is far too weak. Anyone can bully me. I refuse to be treated like prey ever again, so I choose to follow you. Choose me. Bai Xiaochuan pointed at himself, wondering if he had misheard. He let out a dry laugh and subtly moved a small distance away. I'll be clear from the start. I don't support idle hands. No free meals here. Chu Linger did not step back. Instead, she shifted closer by half a foot. A faint scent of gardenia mixed with damp forest air drifted toward Bai Xiaochuan. His shoulders tensed instantly. She was too close, well past the safe distance he needed. I am not here to rely on you for food. Tears still glistened in Chu Linger's eyes, but her voice steadied. When you saved me, you held me for 30 seconds. Bai Xiaochuan's eyelids twitched. Right after that, your wood lizard transformed. Silence fell over the hut, broken only by the crackle of burning firewood. Cold sweat trickled down Bai Xiaochuan's spine, though he maintained a stern expression. You're imagining things. I'm not. Chu Linger shook her head, glancing toward the wood lizard in the grass. When you held me, you kept focusing on some invisible timer, counting down silently. The instant you hit 30 seconds, you commanded your lizard to fight back. She looked straight back at Bai Xiaochuan. I suspect you possess a special ability. You need physical contact with others to activate it. Am I correct? Bai Xiaochuan's insides turned cold. Was this girl really from the dance department? Her power of observation rivaled professional interrogators. Baseless speculation. He stuck firmly to his lie. I just hit my head and got confused. Chu Linger chose not to press further. I don't care what your power is. She took a shallow breath, fingers crumpling her torn skirt tightly. If you can keep me safe, I am willing to act as your exclusive support. Bai Xiaochuan froze. Chu Linger's voice softened. Whenever you need to activate your ability in the future, you can come to me. You can make physical contact with me. She paused, as if draining every ounce of courage. Bai Xiaochuan's mind buzzed. Was this cooperation offer far too generous? He meant to reply that it was unnecessary, yet words spilled out before he could think. Really? Anywhere? Does that include my thighs? The air turned icy still. Chu Linger stiffened for 2 seconds, her cheeks blazing red. She hung her head, knuckles wide around her skirt. But for the sake of survival, she gritted her teeth and gave a slight nod. Bai Xiaochuan snapped back to his senses immediately. He wanted to kick himself. Why did he have to blurt that out? Ahem. Bai Xiaochuan quickly looked away, taking off his tattered jacket and tossing it toward her. The jacket landed neatly over her exposed calves. I was teasing you. I'm not that unscrupulous. Chu Linger hugged the jacket stained with his blood and stared at him blankly. Bai Xiaochuan squirmed under her gaze and forced a stern tone. All right, go sleep in the corner. Don't cross that line. I'm a heavy sleeper, and I don't know what I'll do if disturbed. Chu Linger glanced at the faint boundary drawn on the ground, then at Bai Xiaochuan's reddened ear tips. Her wariness faded a little. Understood. She clutched the jacket and retreated to the corner. Bai Xiaochuan heaved a quiet sigh of relief. He squatted beside the grass again, watching the countdown floating above the wood lizard. The pale cyan light grew brighter, flickers of purple crystal light flashing beneath its old skin. Early the next morning. Whoa! A shrill air raid alarm tore through the mist. Static crackled from the loudspeaker in the center of the camp before a rough voice boomed out. All camp residents listen up. This is camp leader Zhao Hu speaking. Bai Xiaochuan has murdered a fellow student with extreme cruelty. A camp-wide warrant is issued. 10 crystal cores as reward for anyone who brings back his head. A bronze-grade armor set to whoever captures his beast companion alive. Chu Linger jolted awake. Once she processed the broadcast, her face paled instantly. Bai Xiaochuan, we have to leave now. Zhao Hu's berserk bear is peak bronze rank. Wang Ming cannot compare to him at all. Bai Xiaochuan rubbed his throbbing head and stood beside the grass pile. No heavy footsteps echoed outside. Zhao Hu's men had not arrived yet. He stretched his numb arms and walked toward the door. No need to panic. We run only once they block the doorway. Despite his words, he braced himself to face dozens of opponents as he pushed the wooden door open. Creak. The wooden door swung outward. Zhao Hu was nowhere to be seen, nor was there a surrounding mob. Only one woman stood within the mist. Form-fitting black combat wear accentuated her tall, streamlined frame. Silver hair was tied neatly behind her head, and a bronze sword plaque hung from her waist. She gripped a long sword, the tip hovering half an inch from Bai Xiaochuan's throat, ready to pierce him at any moment. You are Bai Xiaochuan. The woman's voice was icy, devoid of extra emotion. Bai Xiaochuan did not answer. A system panel visible only to him unfurled above her head. Target, Su Qinghan. Attractiveness score, 99. Identity, head of the swordsmanship division. Hidden entry, golden mythic tier, absolute penetration. Extraction requirement, maintain sustained physical contact with the target for over 10 minutes. Bai Xiaochuan's heart hammered violently. Golden tier. A single purple entry had completely remade his wood lizard. Just how overpowering would a golden mythic entry be? Yet excitement faded quickly once he saw the last line, and the sword pointed at his throat. He swallowed hard, his gaze involuntarily sweeping over her balanced, imposing figure. The sword tip hovered merely half a centimeter from his throat. Bai Xiaochuan did not dodge. His gaze remained fixed firmly on the translucent panel floating before him. 10 minutes of physical contact? A curse rose in his mind. This was Su Qinghan, the famously ice-cold beauty. Once, a boy had tried to harass her in the cafeteria, and she'd knocked him unconscious with a single slap. Even brushing against her was asking for serious trouble. Bai Xiaochuan figured he'd have a better chance at survival by simply leaning his neck onto the blade than trying to last 10 minutes against her. What are you staring at? Su Qinghan's voice was frigid. Her wrist stayed unervingly steady, the sword's surface reflecting the half-dried blood streak on Bai Xiaochuan's cheek. Come with me. Zhao Hu's men will arrive soon. I can get you safely out of the camp. Bai Xiaochuan blinked, finally tearing his eyes away from the panel. You're going to protect me? He glanced at the sword badge hanging at Su Qinghan's waist. You're only peak iron rank. Zhao Hu's giant bear is bronze rank. Can you even fight it? That's none of your concern. Su Qinghan's brows tightened, and a flicker of barely restrained anger seeped into her tone. There is only one condition. Tell me, why your beast underwent a mutation. Several heads peeked out from behind distant trees. They were students from the camp, gathered to watch. Staring at the blade pressed against Bai Xiaochuan's throat, none dared to breathe loudly. Some gestured silently, their lips forming exaggerated words. Is Bai Xiaochuan insane? How dare he provoke Su Qinghan? At Bai Xiaochuan's feet, the wood lizard crouched on the threshold. Its purple-black crystal armor still carried fresh, uncaked blood. Its forelegs were as thick as small buckets, and the venomous spike at the tip of its tail tapped rhythmically against the ground. Its metamorphosis from the previous night had long since finished. Bai Xiaochuan's mind raced rapidly. A direct fight was impossible. He could not win, nor could he maintain contact long enough. That left only one option: create an opportunity. Whoa! He lurched forward abruptly. His right hand shot out, clamping firmly around Su Qinghan's sword-wielding wrist. A rush of cold met his palm. Her wrist was slender, yet her skin was taut and muscular, nothing like an ordinary girl's. Contact established. Target, Su Qinghan. Trade extraction progress. One Su Qinghan's breath caught for a split second. In 20 years of life, no man besides her father had ever touched her hand. The next instant, she wrenched her arm backward. It did not budge. Bai Xiaochuan leaned on her wrist to steady himself. The wound on his forehead oozed blood once more, and his entire arm trembled. What are you doing? Su Qinghan's voice wavered. Let go. I'm not letting go. Bai Xiaochuan gritted his teeth, tightening his grip further, and his calves shook convincingly. I hurt my knee when Wang Ming attacked me earlier. I can barely stand. I'm socially anxious. When I get nervous, I have to hold on to something. When I was little, I clung to my mother's coat. Later, I grabbed door handles. This sword is razor sharp. If your hand slips, I'll get stabbed. I'll only feel safe if I'm holding on to you. Inside the wooden cabin, Chu Linger hugged her tattered coat, her shoulders shaking. She buried her face in the fabric, struggling to hold back laughter. Su Qinghan stared at by Xiaochuan's fingers. The hilt creaked gently beneath her clenched grip. If she was not hoping to strike a deal with him, she would have driven this hand straight into the wooden door with her sword. I will not stab you. She forced her words out through simmering frustration. You may release me now. Still can't. Bai Xiaochuan squeezed harder, even giving her wrist a slight shake. During your speech at the auditorium last time, you said a person must keep their word. I believe you when you say you won't stab me now. But that doesn't mean you won't change your mind later. If I hold on, we can both feel secure. Su Qinghan fell silent. For the first time, she realized just how shameless someone could sound while acting completely earnest. Desperate to drag out the time, Bai Xiaochuan rambled on about anything he could think of. Senior, did you defeat your opponent with a single strike in the inter-school tournament? That strike was incredible. I was stunned watching the live stream. How many hours does the Kendo Club train every day? 6, 8. The mosquitoes on this island are vicious too. My wood lizard only ate leaves the day before yesterday, yet yesterday it killed a black panther. Does diet have such a big impact on contracted beasts? He chattered nonstop, not giving Su Qinghan a single chance to cut in. Every 2 seconds, however, his eyes darted toward the panel. 2035-50 Su Qinghan tried to pull free several times, but his constant chatter disrupted her each time. Her wrist grew warm beneath his grasp, and the tips of her pale ears slowly flushed pink. The students hidden behind the trees watched in stunned silence. Holy hell, he's actually holding Su Qinghan's hand. Last time Zhang Kai merely brushed her sword tassel, and she chased him halfway across the camp with her blade. Is this guy suicidal? How can he act so bold at a moment like this? Bai Xiaochuan ignored all the whispers. The moment the progress bar hit 70, the ground trembled. Heavy footsteps echoed from the main path of the camp. Thud, thud. A low bear's roar rumbled alongside the steps, shaking leaves loose from the trees. Su Qinghan's expression darkened. Zhao Hu's enraged giant bear. He's here ahead of schedule. Bai Xiaochuan tightened his hold and shifted a little closer to Su Qinghan. What do we do then? I don't want to get swatted to death by a bear. Release me, so I can draw my sword. Su Qinghan grew urgent, resting her left hand on the sheath. Stay calm. Bai Xiaochuan did not lift his eyes, his gaze locked on the progress bar. Just wait a little longer. At the end of the tree line, a crowd surged into view. Nearly 40 people, armed with steel pipes and machetes, trampling the muddy ground. At the front, Zhao Hu rode atop a 3-meter-tall brown giant bear. He slung a spiked mace over his shoulder, his bald head glistening in the morning sunlight. Every step the bear took left cracks in the mud beneath its paws. Witnessing the scene, the surrounding students hastily scattered to either side, no one daring to block its path. Zhao Hu spotted the two figures at the cabin entrance instantly. His gaze landed on Bai Xiaochuan's hand wrapped around Su Qinghan's wrist, and his laughter cut off for 2 heartbeats. Then thunderous laughter erupted. I wondered who had enough sway to bring our esteemed Kendo captain out here. Zhao Hu spat onto the ground. Turns out the two of you are already in cahoots. He fixed his eyes on Bai Xiaochuan, overflowing with contempt. A useless pretty boy, daring to lay hands on Su Qinghan? Men, move out. Beat this kid half to death and feed him to the bear. Bind the woman and bring her back to the tents. Zhao Hu bared his teeth in a grin. I'll celebrate 2 victories tonight. Dozens of men raised their weapons and charged toward the wooden cabin, shouting wildly. The progress bar hit 82 as chaos erupted among the trees. Nearly 40 men brandishing pipes and blades rushed forward, their boots rippling puddles in the mud. Su Qinghan gripped her sword hilt, her voice cold as ice. Will you let go or not? If you refuse, I'll strike you first. Come on, senior. Bai Xiaochuan clamped her wrist even tighter, his fingers sinking slightly into her skin. If you cut me down, who will hold off Zhao Hu? You think you can hold him off? Su Qinghan almost laughed from exasperation. I can buy you a few seconds at the very least. Bai Xiaochuan stared at the progress bar, continuing his rambling. Senior, what hand cream do you use? Your hands are so cold. Could you have poor circulation? People with poor circulation should eat more lamb. Lamb hot pot. Shut up. Su Qinghan's ears burned bright red. She longed to pin this man to the door with her sword. Progress. 85-87 sitting on the giant bear's back. Zhao Hu watched Bai Xiaochuan clinging to Su Qinghan's wrist, the veins on his hands bulging. What are you waiting for? He lifted his spiked mace and pointed forward. Charge! 3 athletic students rushed to within 10 meters. Sunlight glinted off their steel pipes. Su Qinghan abandoned further argument. Clang! Her right hand was trapped in by Xiaochuan's grasp, forcing her to wield the sword one-handed. Even so, her strike was blindingly fast. A silver arc of sword energy skimmed the ground and crashed into the lead student. Boom! He did not even have time to scream before the blast sent him flying, crashing heavily into the mud. Sword energy worthy of peak iron rank. The men behind him hesitated. Su Qinghan did not pause. She twisted her wrist, unleashing a second horizontal slash of light. Several more attackers stumbled backward, but the ground shook violently the next instant. The giant bear closed in to 5 meters. It raised a massive paw, the wind screaming as it swung towards Su Qinghan. Su Qinghan dodged sideways. The paw slammed into the ground right beside her, spraying mud and stone shards everywhere. She countered with a sword strike against the bear's paw, leaving only a faint white mark. Bronze-rank defenses could not be pierced by iron-rank sword energy. Su Qinghan gritted her teeth. Damn it. Progress. 91-93 Zhao Hu leaped down from the bear's back, swinging his spiked mace straight for Bai Xiaochuan's head. Still clinging on? The mace cut through the air. I'll let you hold on forever. Bai Xiaochuan's pupils constricted. He tried to dodge, but Zhao Hu's attack was too fast. The mace was already descending toward him. At that moment, Su Qinghan moved. Her right hand was still trapped, and one-handed swordplay could not block the blow. She exerted all her strength, yanking Bai Xiaochuan backward. Foolish. They both lost balance and tumbled into the mud in front of the door. Bai Xiaochuan's shoulder crashed hard against Su Qinghan. A warm sensation met him, and the cool fragrance of gardenia filled his nostrils. Bai Xiaochuan's mind went blank for a moment. Soft, fragrant, solid. He berated himself as soon as the thought crossed his mind. Su Qinghan froze completely. In 20 years of life, no man besides her father had ever been this close to her. First her wrist seized without permission, and now this abrupt collision. Her fingers slowly curled into fists. Bai Xiaochuan. The system notification boomed inside Bai Xiaochuan's mind the very next second. Ding. 10 minutes of sustained contact achieved. Extraction complete. Congratulations to host for triggering Transcendent Critical Strike. Extracted Golden Mythic Trait, Absolute Penetration. Grant this trait to your contracted beast immediately? Grant it. Bai Xiaochuan shouted internally, before he could pull away. Su Qinghan seized the back of his collar and hauled him roughly to his feet. Get away from me. Her voice was icy, yet the tips of her ears burned crimson. Just then, a burst of golden light erupted from the cabin threshold. The wood lizard that had lain motionless stirred. Boom. A golden pillar of light shot skyward from its body, and a powerful shockwave swept the surrounding area. Zhao Hu was sent flying alongside his mace. He rolled 3 times through the mud before slamming into a tree. The giant bear let out a low roar, scraping deep gouges into the ground with its claws. Golden mist wrapped around the wood lizard's body. Its frame began to expand. Shatters of purple-black crystal armor flaked away, revealing newly formed scales beneath. The scales were pitch black as ink, edged with delicate golden threads. Its limbs lengthened, its spine arched upward, and its skull sharpened into a fierce silhouette. 2 short whiskers slowly sprouted from either side of its maw. Ding. Warning. Fusion of golden trait triggering secondary genetic restructuring. Contracted beast species undergoing evolution. Current stage, juvenile, flood dragon. Estimated metamorphosis completion time, 3 minutes. Su Qinghan had been ready to unleash a torrent of anger, but her words died in her throat. Staring at the figure shrouded in golden light at the doorway, she forgot everything she planned to say for the first time. Bai Xiaochuan steadied himself. He looked at the wood lizard, now 3 times larger than it had been the previous day, and gaped. Only yesterday, it had been a weak creature that could barely chew leaves. Now it bore the shape of a flood dragon. Bai Xiaochuan swallowed hard. A flood dragon? This was still that useless wood lizard? Zhao Hu pushed himself up from the mud, half his face coated in dirt. His spiked mace lay abandoned some distance away. He pushed against the ground repeatedly before managing to stand. He stared at the black-scaled flood dragon wreathed in golden light at the entrance, his hands clenching and unclenching nonstop. What creature is that? He fixed his gaze on Bai Xiaochuan, his voice lacking its previous bravado. That worthless lizard of yours. Bai Xiaochuan ignored him. He stood at the cabin doorway. Behind him, the flood dragon continued its metamorphosis. Beside him, Su Qinghan leaned against the wall, recovering from the collision. Chu Ling'er peeked cautiously out of the wooden house, watching the scene unfold. A brief silence fell. Bai Xiaochuan offered Zhao Hu what he thought was a friendly grin. Brother Zhao. He nodded toward the giant bear. Mind letting your bear serve as sparring practice for my lizard? Zhao Hu's expression turned utterly grim. The giant bear rose behind him. Its 3-meter frame blocked half the sky. Bronze fur stood on end, thick saliva dripping from its fangs. This time, however, Zhao Hu did not give the order to attack. He could see clearly. The flood dragon's evolution remained incomplete, yet the aura it exuded already forced the giant bear to lower its body instinctively. In their current state, victory was far from guaranteed. If he lost, the bear's crystal core, all his resources, and his position as camp leader would be lost along with it. Zhao Hu ground his teeth and pulled a small black vial from his waist. Dark red runes were carved across its surface, and black sediment swirled at the bottom. Bai Xiaochuan frowned. What's that now? You think I'll surrender? Zhao Hu twisted open the cap, madness overtaking his eyes. Never. He tilted the vial and poured every drop of liquid into the giant bear's maw. The moment the fluid touched its throat, the bear froze. The next instant, its chest heaved wildly, and muffled growls rumbled from its throat. Crack, crack, crack. Bones shifted beneath its fur one after another. The bear's pupils flooded with crimson. Its body expanded once more, veins bulging beneath its pelt like writhing living creatures. Its breathing grew heavier, splitting the mud beneath its paws. Zhao Hu bared his teeth in a grin. Berserk Potion. A treasure I found near the restricted zone. It doubles combat power after consumption. He slapped the giant bear's hindquarters. Tear that worm to shreds. The giant bear roared toward the sky. Roar. The sound wave sent countless leaves tumbling down. It pushed off with its front paws, spraying mud everywhere, and charged toward the black-scaled flood dragon like an out-of-control war chariot. Bai Xiaochuan's smile froze. The countdown hovered above the flood dragon's head. Metamorphosis countdown. 2 minutes 9 seconds. But the berserk giant bear was already closing in. The berserk bear charged forward at more than twice its previous speed. Every step split the mud beneath its feet. Su Qinghan leaned against the fractured wall, her chest rising and falling rapidly. The two sword strikes she had unleashed single-handed earlier had nearly drained all her stamina. Coupled with the fall caused by Bai Xiaochuan, her legs still trembled too badly to support her weight. She watched Bai Xiaochuan's slender back, her lips parting. In the end, only one word escaped. Run. Bai Xiaochuan wanted to run too. But Chu Linger was still hiding inside the cabin. Su Qinghan could barely stand. The berserk giant bear was already at the door. If he turned and fled, the two of them would not survive 3 seconds. More than that, Bai Xiaochuan glanced down at the flood dragon beside him. He had just gained this tremendous advantage. How could he abandon them and run? That would be unforgivable. Run my foot. Bai Xiaochuan set his jaw and looked toward the flood dragon. Metamorphosis countdown, 1 minute 40 seconds. 1 minute and 40 seconds. Bai Xiaochuan dropped to his knees, placing one palm atop the flood dragon's head while grabbing a broken wooden stick from the ground with his other hand. He swallowed nervously, yet his voice remained steady. Hold on. Last 1 minute. The black-scaled flood dragon let out a low hiss. Every black scale on its body flared open, the golden edges glowing brightly. Its forelimbs braced the ground, hind legs bending, its elongated body coiled like a fully drawn bow. The berserk giant bear pounced straight for them. It lifted its right paw, pressing down like it could blot out the sky. The flood dragon did not retreat. It opened its jaws and lunged straight for the bear's paw. Crack! Golden light burst between its fangs. Its razor-sharp teeth pierced the bronze tear hide, sinking deep into the bear's paw flesh. Roar! The giant bear tilted its head and howled in agony, swinging its other paw horizontally. Boom! The flood dragon was sent flying. Its body slid 3 meters across the mud, and the newly grown black scales along its back split open on impact. Blood trickled through the cracks. Yet beneath the fractured plating, fresh black scales sprouted rapidly. A flicker of golden thread sealed the wounds shut. The flood dragon drove its foreclaws deep into the mud and forced itself upright. Zhao Hu stood behind the giant bear and burst into mocking laughter. Is that all you've got? You dare call this thing a flood dragon? It wouldn't even be enough to fill the gaps between my teeth. Bai Xiaochuan ignored him. His gaze remained locked on the countdown hovering above the flood dragon's head. Metamorphosis countdown, 50 seconds. The berserk giant bear charged forward once more. This time, both paws crashed down simultaneously, striking with far greater strength and speed than before. The flood dragon dodged the first blow sideways. Crash! The paw slammed into the ground right beside it, blowing open a half-meter deep crater. The second paw followed instantly, grazing the flood dragon's tail before slamming into the earth. The tip of its tail jolted from the shockwave. Bai Xiaochuan shouted anxiously, "Don't dodge. Fight it." The black-scaled flood dragon glanced back at him. Violence flickered within its dark, golden vertical pupils. In the next instant, it sprinted low across the ground. Its lithe body slipped between the giant bear's legs. It lashed its tail against the mud to pivot. It sank its fangs into the tendons on the bear's hind leg. Rip! Golden light surged through the fangs into the wound. The giant bear's hind leg buckled, and its massive frame crashed to its knees. But the berserk potion had numbed it to all pain. Without pause, it twisted its neck and bit down hard toward the flood dragon's throat. Bai Xiaochuan's heart lurched. Metamorphosis countdown, 20 seconds. The flood dragon was clamped tightly around the neck. A shrill screech echoed as black scales scraped against the bear's fangs. It thrashed wildly, unable to break free. The two colossal beasts rolled across the mud, carving a trench more than 10 meters long into the terrain. "Hold on." Bai Xiaochuan's voice turned hoarse. Seizing the opening, Xiaohu picked up a spiked mace he had retrieved at some point and charged at the flood dragon. "Now's the chance. While it's trapped, let's finish it." Bai Xiaochuan lifted his head. Xiaohu raised the heavy mace high above his head. He glanced at the battling flood dragon, then at the lethal weapon. Bai Xiaochuan surged forward, charging straight toward Xiaohu. Bang! The two collided violently. Xiaohu stood a full head taller and weighed over 50 kilos more. The mace swept past Bai Xiaochuan's shoulder. The overwhelming force fractured his left shoulder. Crack! The crisp sound of splintered bone hung in the air. Black spots swam across Bai Xiaochuan's vision, and his entire left arm went numb. Pain, agony threatened to bring him to his knees. Still, his right hand clamped firmly. Xiaohu wrenched backward. It would not budge. "Let go. Are you out of your mind? Why do you always grab hold like this?" Bai Xiaochuan's fingertips bled from the friction, yet his grip never loosened. He spat out a mouthful of blood and looked up at Xiaohu. A bitter smile tugged at his lips. "I'm an introvert, but even cornered animals will bite back." Xiaohu shuddered under his bloodshot stare and drove his fist hard into Bai Xiaochuan's ribs. Thud! Bai Xiaochuan let out a muffled groan and doubled over. His ribs felt as though hammered apart, each breath a labor. His right hand still refused to release. Gritting his teeth, Xiaohu raised his fist once again. Metamorphosis countdown, 3 seconds. The black-scaled flood dragon remained trapped in the bear's jaws. 2 seconds. Xiaohu's fist was inches away from Bai Xiaochuan's face. 1 second. Bai Xiaochuan clenched his jaw, pressing his weight against the mace to stall Xiaohu's movement. Ding. Second metamorphosis complete. Congratulations, host. Your beast has evolved. Juvenile stage, black-scaled flood dragon. Trait, absolute penetration, fully integrated. Current rank, gold 1 star. Boom. Golden light erupted from within the flood dragon. The giant bear's fangs snapped simultaneously. 2 of the teeth shattered completely. Roar! The giant bear yelped and pulled back. The black-scaled flood dragon rolled to its feet and landed heavily. When the golden radiance faded, its limbs stretched longer, its torso growing sleek and powerful. Black scales covered every inch of its body, each plate edged with delicate golden filigree. Its tail moved like a steel whip. A casual sweep. Crack! A tree as thick as a bowl snapped clean in half and crashed into the mud. The flood dragon's skull sharpened as well. 2 short whiskers swayed gently in the wind. Deep within its dark, golden vertical pupils burned blazing golden flames. It opened its jaws. Air rushed toward its maw. Water vapor hovering above the mud, drifting dust. Even fallen leaves nearby were pulled by an invisible force. A condensed golden beam slowly formed deep in its throat. The air whined as it was drawn inward. Xiaohu froze with the mace suspended midair. The wild grin on his face froze solid. He stared rigidly. He stared at the massive beast covered in black scales gathering golden light in its throat and unconsciously stepped backward. "This isn't right," his voice trembled. "This isn't some mutated lizard." Xiaohu stared fixedly at the golden beam building inside the flood dragon's throat. A term he had read about surfaced in his mind. "This is..." He never finished his sentence. The black-scaled flood dragon lifted its head. Golden fire lit up the entire rainforest. As the golden beam surged forth, the surrounding air twisted violently, and mist rose from the mud as moisture boiled away. The berserk giant bear's paw still hung suspended. The golden light slammed into its chest. Squelch! The bronze tear hide that even Su Qinghan's sword strikes failed to cut barely held for half a heartbeat before melting into a bowl-sized bleeding cavity. The golden beam pierced straight through the bear's torso, its momentum undiminished. Zhao Hu raised the mace to block, his pupils shrinking to pinpricks. Hold it off. Sizzle. The forged iron mace resisted only for a moment before glowing bright red, melting into molten metal that splattered onto the mud. An instant later, the golden beam swept across Zhao Hu's right shoulder. A sharp stench of burning flesh filled the air. His right arm was severed clean at the shoulder, the stump charred black. Dark red blood spurted out several heartbeats afterward. Aya! Zhao Hu clutched his empty shoulder and writhed madly in the mud. His screams echoed through the woods, sending flocks of birds surging into the sky. The dozens of men who had been charging forward screeched to an abrupt halt. Those in the front rank collided with one another, tumbling over. No one dared take another step forward, even if it meant falling into muddy puddles. Students hiding behind trees ducked low, barely daring to breathe. What was that? You call that a wood lizard? One boy stared rigidly at the black-scaled flood dragon, his voice wavering. Nonsense. If that's still a wood lizard, I'll go chew on a tree. That's a dragon. Zhao Hu's berserk bear was peak bronze rank. It could smash boulders with one paw, and it couldn't withstand a single attack. The black-scaled flood dragon shook its head, thin wisps of golden flame drifting from its jaws. It flicked its tail carelessly. Flash! A half-meter-deep trench opened across the ground. The crowd scrambled backward. Not a single person dared move to help Zhao Hu where he lay on the mud. The flood dragon paid them no mind. It ambled over to the giant bear's corpse, pried open its skull with one claw, and retrieved a fist-sized crystal core. Crunch! It crunched the crystal core between its teeth. Bronze-colored energy streamed through its fangs into its body. The golden veins edging its black scales lit up briefly before dimming again. Bai Xiaochuan clutched his injured left shoulder, fighting waves of sharp pain. Zhao Hu's blow had fractured his shoulder bone. Every small movement sent agony shooting up his neck to his temples. He lifted his head and scanned his surroundings. The moment dozens of pairs of eyes met his gaze, every face paled, and they collectively stepped back 3 paces. Thud! A sports student's legs buckled, and he dropped to his knees in the muddy water, banging his forehead against the ground. Brother Chuan, Zhao Hu forced me. He threatened my sister's beast. If I refused to come, he would cast her out of the camp. Others quickly caught on and began begging frantically. I was forced to. I never wanted to oppose you. Brother Chuan, I'll leave right now. Dozens of eyes locked onto Bai Xiaochuan. Cold sweat broke out across his back. Oh no. He had arrived at the social interaction scenario he dreaded most. He could let the flood dragon fight battles, but being stared down by dozens of people filled him with awkwardness. Bai Xiaochuan quietly shuffled half a step closer to the black-scaled flood dragon. After a long pause, he forced out a sentence. I won't hurt any of you. The crowd fell stunned. Their stares made him even more uncomfortable, and his brows drew tighter. You can all leave. Dried blood crusted his cheeks, and fresh blood trickled down his forehead past his eyebrows. Though his tone was calm, the pain in his eyes lent him a ferocious edge. Everyone listening jumped to the worst conclusion. They thought he was issuing a threat. Leave. It meant get out. If they hesitated, they would end up like the man missing an arm on the mud. Thank you for sparing our lives, Brother Chuan. Someone shouted. In the next second, every person spun around and fled. Several tripped in their haste, face planting in mud. Others simply stepped over them without stopping to help. Steel pipes and blades littered the ground. Abandoned without a second glance. In less than 30 seconds, every last one of Zhao Hu's followers had vanished. Bai Xiaochuan stared at their retreating backs. He parted his lips. Am I really that intimidating? Su Qinghan propped herself up against a splintered wooden wall. Her gaze remained fixed on the black-scaled flood dragon. That golden breath had pierced straight through peak bronze tier defenses. Such power could not be explained by ordinary mutation. Su Qinghan fell silent for several seconds before turning to Bai Xiaochuan. What species is your contracted beast? Bai Xiaochuan instinctively avoided her eyes. It's just a lizard. Su Qinghan glanced at the 3-meter-tall bear corpse on the ground. Then she looked at the black-scaled beast beside him. You call this a lizard? It mutated a little. Bai Xiaochuan's voice grew quieter. Just a tiny bit. A vein pulsed faintly at Su Qinghan's temple. She had countless questions burning on her tongue. But seeing how desperately he seemed ready to vanish into thin air, she held them back for the time being. Chu Lingran ran out of the wooden cabin as well. Clutching a torn scrap of her skirt, she tiptoed forward and carefully wiped blood from Bai Xiaochuan's shoulder. Don't move. Your shoulder is fractured. Her fingers trembled badly, yet she pressed crushed medicinal herbs gently around the wound. I'll bandage you first. It's a bone injury. We need a beastmaster with healing abilities. Bai Xiaochuan's lips paled from the pain, and he was about to nod. The black-scaled flood dragon suddenly raised its head. Its dark, golden vertical pupils narrowed to thin slits. Shing! Every scale along its neck stood erect, and low growls rumbled deep in its throat. Chu Lingran froze mid-motion. At the exact same moment, Su Qinghan spun around and raised her sword again. The wind had shifted. A cold, stale gust swept out from deep within the rainforest, carrying a thick, cloying stench. Rotting flesh reek lingered beneath the metallic tang of blood. The chirps of insects and birds that had filled the forest moments earlier vanished, leaving an eerie hush. Then the ground trembled softly. Thud! Another tremor. Thud! 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 The vibrations grew more frequent, like thousands of feet stomping across mud. Dust showered down from the cabin's roof beams. A heavy weight settled in by Xiaochuan's chest as he turned to face the rainforest. Amid the dim, tangled shadows, a pair of blood-red eyes lit up first. Then a second, a third. In the blink of an eye, crimson glimmers filled the forest in every direction. What the hell? Before Bai Xiaochuan finished speaking, a spotted black tiger crashed through the bushes and sprinted out. It was missing one hind leg, half its belly rotted away with intestines dragging across the mud, yet it ran at full speed. Behind it lumbered a venomous python with half its skin peeling off. A tusked wolf with a broken neck, and countless unknown mutated beasts joined in. Far more unsettling. Numerous figures wearing school uniforms mixed within the beast horde. Their skin was ashen black, eyes bloodshot, fingernails grown half an inch long, and dark fluid dripped continuously from their mouths. One student had a broken branch protruding from his chest. Another possessed only a single arm. Yet none of them felt pain, trampling over the bodies of their kin as they charged forward. The medicinal herbs slipped from Chu Lingren's grasp and fell into the mud. A tide of corrupted beasts. All color drained from her face. The broadcast said the tide wouldn't erupt until midnight. We still have 3 hours. Su Qinghan tightened her grip on her sword hilt. For the first time, tremors edged into her voice. This isn't an ordinary tide. She pointed her sword forward. A giant rotting bear crashed through trees, smashing obstacles in its path. Its chest cavity had collapsed, yet an aura far stronger than common corrupted beasts emanated from its frame. Do you see that bear? A high bronze tier corrupted bear king. Su Qinghan swallowed hard. In our current state, we stand almost no chance. Bai Xiaochuan followed the tip of her sword. The next instant, his expression shifted. Slightly ahead of the bear king walked a tall figure. He wore tattered combat sportswear, one leg bent at an unnatural angle. With every step, splintered bone poked through rotting flesh. Half his face had decayed away, exposing pale cheekbone. A fragment of rotten black panther pelt hung around his neck, and in his right fist he clutched a half-gnawed human bone. Bai Xiaochuan could never mistake him. It was Wang Ming, the Wang Ming he had defeated earlier. Wang Ming halted, dragging his broken leg. He slowly lifted his remaining undecayed eye, locking onto Bai Xiaochuan across the surging tide of corrupted creatures. He, weird whimpers, half laugh and half sob, squeezed out of his decaying throat. He still recognized Bai Xiaochuan. A heartbeat later, Wang Ming raised his withered arm and swept it violently toward the cabin. Boom. The entire corrupted tide accelerated as one, like a black flood bursting through a broken dam. They bore down on the three of them amid deafening snarls. Wang Ming let out rasping, eerie cackles. The wind carried the overwhelming stench of rot straight into their nostrils, churning Bai Xiaochuan's stomach. Su Qinghan grabbed his arm and pointed her sword toward the west. Run. 300 meters west stands a steel watchtower left by the research expedition. It has iron sheet walls and lockable doors. We must get inside first. Bai Xiaochuan wasted no words. He lifted the shaky Chu Lingran onto his back and blew a sharp whistle. The black-scaled flood dragon immediately turned. Move. The flood dragon charged into the thick forest. Its powerful tail swept left and right, snapping medium-sized trees and carving a path through the rainforest. Bai Xiaochuan followed close behind, with Chu Lingran on his back. Every jolt sent shooting agony through his fractured left shoulder. Cold sweat soaked his shirt in no time. The snarls behind them drew steadily closer. Several corrupted wolves burst out from the side, black saliva dripping from rotting jaws, lunging toward Chu Lingren's calves dangling beside Bai Xiaochuan's waist. Behind us, Chu Lingran cried out. Bai Xiaochuan did not bother turning his head. The black-scaled flood dragon's tail lashed out already. Bang! The leading corrupted wolf flew 7 or 8 meters backward, crashing into a tree and splattering rotten flesh and black blood everywhere. The rest tried to circle around, but a low growl rumbled from the flood dragon's throat. Golden flame glinted between its fangs, making the corrupted beasts hesitate instinctively. That split-second delay allowed the three of them to burst out of the forest. A 3-meter-tall steel watchtower stood before them. "Hurry inside." Su Qinghan sprinted up the steps first, wrenching open the heavy iron door and shoving by Xiaochuan, and Chu Ling ran through. She stepped in last, slamming down a thick steel bolt and dragging a steel support frame to wedge against the door. Thud! They had barely caught their breath when the iron door caved inward violently. A shrill metallic groan echoed throughout the watchtower. Plastered dust showered down from the walls. "They've caught up." Chu Lingran knelt beside the door, pulled out several packets of toxin powder she had ground the previous night, and poured them all through the cracks. Hissing corrosion sounds erupted outside instantly. Several corrupted beasts pressed against the door, let out miserable screams, and the force of their ramming lessened temporarily. Yet more corrupted creatures surged forward, trampling over the fallen ones. Bang! 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 The entire watchtower shook violently. Bai Xiaochuan leaned against the iron wall, gasping against the throbbing pain. His shoulder wound had been jostled non-stop during the escape, and blood began trickling down his arm again after briefly stopping. At that moment, a system notification echoed in his mind. Ding! Detected hosts party under siege by bronze tier corrupted tide. Temporary unlock. Trait stacking function. Maintain sustained contact with extracted targets. 1 layer of trait amplification stacks every 5 seconds, capped at 3 layers. Once fully stacked within 15 seconds, trait power surges by 300, and derivative abilities activate. A sharp breath caught in by Xiaochuan's throat. 15 seconds, 3 stacks. This could turn the tide. But as he lifted his head, he froze all over again. Only 2 targets had been extracted so far. Su Qinghan to his left, Chu Linger to his right, which meant he needed to maintain contact with them once more, right in front of the surging horde of corpses. A faint flush crept up by Xiaochuan's ears. Crisis loomed, and he could not afford distracting thoughts. What's wrong? Su Qinghan noticed his strange state and the cold sweat coating his forehead. She instinctively reached out to touch his brow. Is your wound flaring up? Her hand had yet to make contact when a sharp crack echoed from the iron gate. Crack! A bluish-black corpse hand pierced through the metal sheet. Claws half a foot long dripped emerald venom, striking straight for Chu Linger, who stood closest to the door. Su Qinghan reacted instantly. A flash of sword light severed the corpse hand cleanly at the wrist. The severed limb twitched on the ground, and venom splattered across the earth, burning pockmarks wreathed in thin smoke. The gate won't hold. Su Qinghan drove her sword through the gash in the door, piercing the skull of a corpse rat outside. The Corpse King hasn't even attacked yet, and this gate is already falling apart. Once it draws near, one blow could level the entire tower. Bai Xiaochuan gritted his teeth. Death stared them in the face. He could not afford hesitation. He stretched out his left hand and grasped Su Qinghan's sword-wielding wrist. Reaching back with his right, he caught Chu Linger's wrist as well. Both girls stiffened at once. Su Qinghan's ear tips flushed instantly, and she tugged her arm backward. She could not pull free. Bai Xiaochuan. Her voice wavered. Now is hardly the time for this. Chu Linger's cheeks burned red. She clutched the hem of her tattered skirt tightly. I know you saved me, but can we set this aside until we escape alive? It's not what you think. Heat flooded by Xiaochuan's face. He dared only stare at the ground, yet his grip never loosened. I'm stacking buffs. Just 15 seconds. Once the time passes, we can fight our way out. His words held a shred of credibility, yet they only deepened the misunderstanding. Su Qinghan stared at him for 2 heartbeats, then glanced at the crumbling iron gate. In the end, she bit her lip and stopped struggling. Chu Linger pressed her lips together and gently shifted her wrist deeper into his grasp. Sweat soaked by Xiaochuan's palms. 2 companions stood within his reach. Others might have grown distracted, yet only one thought raced through his mind. Hurry, just a little longer. Sustained contact duration, 5 seconds. First layer stacked successfully. Thorn counterattack power increased by 100. Outside the gate, beastly corpses slammed into the metal barrier once more. Boom. A huge dent caved into the center of the door, and the steel bolts began to warp. Sustained contact duration, 10 seconds. Second layer stacked successfully. Absolute piercing power increased by 200. At the same time, an unnerving scraping noise echoed from outside the watchtower. Something was climbing up the steel frame. Su Qinghan's expression shifted. She was about to look upward when the final system notification resounded. Sustained contact duration, 15 seconds. Third layer stacked successfully. Trait stacking complete. Thorn counterattack and absolute toxin unlock derivative abilities. Amethyst collective barrier, toxic mist diffusion. Amethyst collective barrier, 3-meter radius, reflects physical strikes and corrosive venom. Toxic mist diffusion, 10-meter radius, cripples the nervous systems of corpses below black iron rank. Grant abilities to contracted beast immediately. Grant, by Xiaochuan roared inwardly. Purple light surged into the black-scaled flood dragon. The steel beam overhead creaked under sudden weight. A hand with rotting flesh clinging to exposed bone clamped onto the edge of the skylight. As Bai Xiaochuan looked up, a boulder weighing dozens of kilograms plummeted downward. Crash! Tempered glass shattered into countless fragments. Wang Ming dragged his broken leg, clinging to the outside of the skylight. A grotesque, twisted smile spread across his half-decomposed face. He! Behind him, the outer steel frame bent severely underweight. A bear-shaped corpse king, over 2 meters tall, stepped atop layers of lesser corpses. Its bare claws locked onto the steel beam, hauling itself onto the tower roof. It opened its massive jaws. A wave of putrid wind swept into the watchtower, stinging their eyes. The next instant, a stream of emerald venom sprayed downward from the skylight, aiming to engulf all 3 of them. Barrier! Bai Xiaochuan shouted sharply. The black-scaled flood dragon tilted its head and roared. Violet crystal radiance burst forth from its body, forming a translucent barrier expanding outward from the beast, sheltering all 3 humans and the flood dragon within range. Venom crashed against the barrier. Sizzle! Ripples spread across the amethyst surface. The emerald venom rebounded straight back, splattering across the bear corpse king's face. The corpse king unleashed a deafening roar. Before Bai Xiaochuan could catch his breath, a series of cracking noises rose from beneath their feet. Crack! 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 Bai Xiaochuan glanced down, and his expression turned grim. Beneath the watchtower, countless corpse rats and corpse hounds gnawed at the concrete foundation. More corpse beasts piled atop one another, smashing several load-bearing steel girders out of shape. The final support beam could endure no longer. Bang! The steel girder snapped clean in two. A powerful sense of weightlessness seized their hearts. The entire steel watchtower lurched violently to one side, carrying the 3 humans and the fully amplified black-scaled flood dragon plunging toward the dense horde of corpses below. Beneath them stretched hundreds of gaping, rotting maws. The moment the tower tipped downward, only one thought remained in Bai Xiaochuan's mind. Protect them. He pulled Su Qinghan and Chu Linger tightly toward him, using his elbows to shield the backs of their heads. Weightlessness washed over them. Shattered steel, glass, and the 3 humans hurtled toward the corpse horde. Yet the expected impact never arrived. The black-scaled flood dragon rushed beneath them first, lowering its body and arching its spine. Swish! Every black scale flared outward. Bai Xiaochuan and the 2 girls landed heavily on its back. The flood dragon's claws sank into the mud as it absorbed the force of the fall. A low growl rumbled in its throat. Violet gold light glowed between its scales, swiftly expanding into a 3-meter-wide, translucent barrier wrapping the whole group. The stream of emerald venom fell moments afterward. Sizzle! The venom collided with the amethyst barrier without leaving a mark, bouncing away once more. Several nearby corpse beasts failed to dodge and were drenched in the toxin. Their rotting flesh immediately billowed with smoke. They shrieked and charged the barrier. Thud! The first corpse wolf slammed into the light shield. In the next second, purple spikes jutted from the barrier surface, piercing straight through its skull. Corpse hounds and corpse rats following close behind could not halt their momentum and crashed into the shield one after another. Uft! 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 Purple spikes erupted repeatedly. More than a dozen corpses slid down the barrier into the mud. Before they could settle, they were swallowed by spreading purple toxic mist. Their flesh blackened and rapidly decomposed. Within seconds, only bubbling black sludge remained on the ground. Bai Xiaochuan rolled off the flood dragon's back. A sharp pain shot through his fractured shoulder, blurring his vision. Gritting his teeth, he steadied himself and guided Su Qinghan and Chu Linger to the center of the barrier, stepping forward to stand guard. From behind the twisted steel debris, the bear corpse king dragged its decaying body out into the open. Wang Ming also poked his rotting face out from the rubble. Unhinged malice burned in his only partially decomposed eye. Bai Xiaochuan spat blood foam from his mouth. Lizard. He pointed toward the corpse king and Wang Ming. Tear them apart. The black-scaled flood dragon had long waited for the order. It raised its head high. Roar. The dragon's roar rolled across the clearing. The surrounding charging corpse beasts froze. Low-tier corpse rats collapsed to the ground, their decaying bodies trembling violently. In the next instant, the flood dragon pushed off the ground. The mud crumbled beneath its paws. It transformed into a black gold streak, wrapped in swirling purple toxic mist, charging head-on toward the bear Corpse King. The Corpse King roared and swung its massive paw. Boom! The strike landed solidly on the flood dragon's back. Violet light flickered. Rebounding force exploded backward instantly. The Corpse King's entire forearm snapped backward. Bones beneath rotting flesh fractured in a sickening sequence of cracks. The flood dragon barely staggered. It lunged forward, pressing against the Corpse King's torso, and sank its fangs into its neck. Against absolute piercing, the bronze high-rank corpse hide offered no more resistance than paper. Puffed, for golden fangs buried themselves deep into the Corpse King's cervical bones. Purple-black venom flooded into the wound. The bear Corpse King tried to roar, yet the sound died in its throat. Black swellings bubbled up along its neck before spreading outward. Toxin raced downward, dissolving chest, abdomen, and limbs alike. Thud! Seconds later, the 3-meter-tall Corpse King crashed into the mud. Its massive body caved inward, quickly melting into a stinking puddle of black muck. The twisted smile froze on Wang Meng's face. He dragged his broken leg and fled deep into the corpse horde. The flood dragon lashed its tail. The barbed tip cut through the air with a sharp whistle. Puffed! The tail pierced Wang Meng's back and burst out through his chest. Wang Meng was lifted into the air, limbs twitching, black blood dripping from his jaws. He stared fixedly at Bai Xiaochuan. His rotting lips parted repeatedly, yet only ragged gasps escaped. Ha ha! The flood dragon's tail shuddered. Purple toxic mist surged into Wang Meng through the wound. His decaying flesh sloughed away rapidly. Within a few breaths, only blackened bones hung suspended in midair. The tail flicked. Clatter! Skeletal remains crashed into the corpse horde and scattered. With the Corpse King and Wang Meng slain, the coordinated charge of the corpse horde descended into chaos. The front ranks continued pushing forward, while those in the rear instinctively turned to flee. The horde collided violently with itself. The flood dragon did not pause its assault. The 3 layers of trait amplification remained active. It opened its jaws wide, golden light coalescing deep within its throat. Air whirled and held around it. The next moment, boom! A golden breath beam 3 times thicker than before swept along the ground. Earth melted into charred trenches. Dozens of corpse beasts in its path lacked time to evade. Golden light pierced their bodies, and they collapsed into the mud in swathes. Surviving corpses attempted to escape to either side, yet purple toxic mist drifted onward on the wind. Any corpse beast below black iron rank that inhaled the mist suffered immediate neural paralysis. They stumbled forward a few paces before losing all motor function and collapsing. Those behind failed to stop, trampling over their fallen kin. The constant crunch of breaking bones filled the air. Deprived of the Corpse King's command, the horde fell into disarray. Golden breath blocked escape forward, and toxic mist sealed the flanks. Less than 10 minutes later, silence fell around the watchtower. Hundreds of corpse beasts lay strewn across the mud. Dark red corpse blood pooled into rivulets, soaking the earth into black mire. The black-scaled flood dragon stood amid the mound of corpses and flicked its tail. It lowered its head, scraped away the black sludge left by the melted Corpse King, and retrieved a dark red crystal core. It trotted back to Bai Xiaochuan's side and dropped the core at his feet. Its large head leaned forward, brushing gently against Bai Xiaochuan's hand. Moments ago, it had crushed the corpse horde without mercy. Now it looked like a loyal beast waiting for praise. Bai Xiaochuan stroked its head. All right, you did great. The flood dragon narrowed its eyes in satisfaction. The tension gripping Bai Xiaochuan finally faded. His legs wobbled, and he nearly sank into the corpse-soaked mud. He had not flinched facing hundreds of corpse beasts, yet when he turned and met the unwavering gazes of Su Qinghan and Chu Linger, he grew awkward all at once. The tips of his ears turned pink. After a long pause, he forced out a sentence. About earlier, I held on to your wrists purely to stack buffs. I didn't intend to act improperly. Sorry about that. Su Qinghan turned her head sharply away. The flush on her ear tips had not faded, and her grip on her sword tightened uncomfortably. I'm not upset about it. She pulled a bottle of white healing salve from her waist and tossed it toward him. Focus on your shoulder first. If another wave of corpses arrives, I won't be able to carry you to safety. Bai Xiaochuan fumbled to catch the bottle. Right. Chu Linger crouched nearby, twisting the hem of her torn skirt, unable to suppress a faint smile. While Bai Xiaochuan was distracted, She stretched out a finger and lightly brushed the back of his hand. She pulled back instantly as if burned. Her cheeks flushed deep red. A jolt ran through Bai Xiaochuan. He was about to speak when Chu Linger suddenly pointed toward a muddy depression several meters away. Bai Xiaochuan, look over there. She gestured toward the mud soaked with corpse blood. Is something buried there? Bai Xiaochuan followed her line of sight. A corner of black oilcloth jutted from the mire, stained with dried, dark blood. He stepped forward and kicked aside scattered steel fragments. The oilcloth bundle lay buried beneath the rubble. Its binding remained intact despite frayed edges. Did one of the corpses drag this here? He knelt and hauled the bundle free. Inside rested 10 polished crystal cores, an unopened vial of berserker serum, and a bronze badge etched with intricate patterns. When Su Qinghan saw the badge, her expression darkened. This is an identification badge for internal staff of the Desert Island contest. Bai Xiaochuan flipped the badge over. 7 tiny characters were carved on the reverse, Desert Island Contest Organizing Committee. Some poor staff member turned into a corpse before finishing their mission. Chu Linger knelt beside him and carefully pried open the oilcloth lining. A folded operation order was concealed inside. The paper edges were stained with dried black blood, and a dark red official seal stamped the bottom right corner. Bai Xiaochuan unfolded the document. Only a few brief lines of text filled the page. Third wave of corpses to be deployed 3 hours ahead of schedule. All forward scouts carrying berserker serum must guide corpse hordes to eliminate low-tier beast tamers and recover scattered crystal cores for unified transport to the Forbidden Zone Core. S-rank operation objective. Gather 100,000 crystal cores to awaken the slumbering ancient species. Anyone capturing a contracted beast of S-rank aptitude will receive direct promotion to major within the Federal Special Operations Battalion. Silence descended upon the group. Bai Xiaochuan stared at the words, his fingers slowly clenching until the paper crumpled. Unbelievable. The so-called Desert Island Survival Trial was nothing more than a slaughter farm, using living humans to nurture monsters. The more than 10,000 student participants were not examinees. They were disposable resources. The corpse hordes were no natural disaster. They were deliberately deployed. Figures like Zhao Hu, the self-proclaimed camp leader, were forward scouts planted by the organizing committee among the students. His task was to stir conflict, collect crystal cores, and lure surviving low-tier beast tamers into the corpse hordes. A ruthlessly efficient scheme of resource exploitation. When students died, their contracted beasts and crystal cores fed the ancient species. If anyone awakened an S-rank contracted beast by chance, both human and beast would be seized. They lost nothing in either outcome. Monsters. Su Qinghan stared at the bronze badge, her voice ice cold. Bai Xiaochuan folded the operation order and tucked it against his chest. We'll keep this. This document is proof that, rumble. He never finished his sentence. The thunderous whine of helicopter rotors echoed from above. Powerful winds pressed downward. Treetops nearby bent sideways, and clouds of stinking mist swirled up from the corpse-soaked mud. All 3 looked upward. 3 matte black armed transport planes cut through the clouds, diving rapidly toward the battlefield. Identical dark patterns matching those on the bronze badge marked both sides of each fuselage. Su Qinghan's face sank. Organizing committee personnel. The aircraft cargo doors slowly slid open. Several operatives clad in black tactical suits stood at the edge of the hatch, braced behind anti-material sniper rifles. Black muzzles angled downward. Reflections of harsh daylight glinted within the targeting scopes. 3 red laser dots cut through the smoke, settling on Bai Xiaochuan's forehead, his chest, and the black-scaled flood dragon's skull. Bai Xiaochuan stiffened. He had barely wiped out the corpse horde, and the so-called officials arrived immediately. The lead operative lifted a megaphone. His frigid voice carried across the battlefield on the wind. Target acquired. Juvenile Flood Dragon Variant. Initial Aptitude Assessment. S rank. Candidate number 9527, Bai Xiaochuan. Suspected of using an unknown external cheat, severely disrupting contest balance. Contest qualification revoked. Execute on site. Contract beast to be confiscated. Bai Xiaochuan almost laughed in anger. These people created the slaughter farm for 10,000 students and unleashed the corpse hordes. Now that they could not defeat his flood dragon, they casually labeled him a cheater. Their behind-the-scenes authority was absurdly overbearing. Click. Multiple anti-material sniper rifles aboard the aircraft simultaneously cocked. The crisp mechanical sound drifted across the clearing. The black-scaled flood dragon slowly lowered its body, ready for battle. Black scales lining his nape stood on end, and golden flames ignited deep within his throat once more. The next instant, every gun barrel locked onto Bai Xiaochuan. The first anti-material round slammed against the amethyst barrier. Boom! A half-foot burst of violet light erupted. The warhead crumpled into a flattened disc mid-air and ricocheted skyward at an angle. Bai Xiaochuan lifted his head. 3 red targeting dots pinned his forehead, his chest, and the head of the black-scaled flood dragon. 3 armed transport helicopters hovered 20 meters overhead, their rotor blades whipping up violent gales. Shredded flesh, black blood, and corpse debris scattered across the mud were caught in the wind, stinging everything in reach. At the cabin door of the central aircraft, a man dressed in black wore a mask covering half his face. He slammed his palm downward. Fire! Take down the dragon first. Rat-a-tat-tat-tat. Multiple machine guns unleashed continuous streaks of fire. Bullets hammered the shield like torrential rain. Each projectile bounced away, yet the violet crystal barrier shuddered violently under the onslaught. The 3 helicopters unleashed overwhelming firepower. The barrier's reflective damage could deflect individual bullets, but it could not withstand this relentless, unceasing bombardment. The radiance of the amethyst shield dimmed rapidly. Thin cracks spiderwebbed outward from its center. Crack! Crack! Warning! Amethyst group barrier on verge of collapse. Only a dozen seconds remained. If they delayed any longer, all 3 of them would be riddled with bullets. Bai Xiaochuan instinctively moved to pull his companions close. He reached for Su Qinghan with his left hand, and reached out to steady the still-stunned Chu Linger with his right. Unfortunately, his boot slid on a blood-soaked steel plate embedded in the mire. His footing gave way. Shit! He lurched forward abruptly. His left arm wrapped firmly around Su Qinghan's torso to steady her, his shoulder pressing against hers. The crisp scent of gardenias surrounded him. His right hand swept backward, catching Chu Linger and pulling her securely behind him. The 3 froze simultaneously. Su Qinghan's grip on her sword wavered, the tips of her ears flushing scarlet. She fought the urge to shove Bai Xiaochuan away, but bullets continued to pour down from above, and the amethyst shield was already fractured like shattered glass. Pushing him out now would condemn him to take the gunfire. She gritted her teeth, her voice tight with tension. Bai Xiaochuan, watch how you position yourself. Chu Linger pressed herself against Bai Xiaochuan's back, clutching his tattered jacket tightly, barely daring to breathe. Stabilize yourself first. Bai Xiaochuan himself was stunned. He was about to pull away and apologize when the system notification blared inside his mind. Detected host maintaining physical contact with 2 marked targets simultaneously. Trait stacking function activated. Maintain contact for 5 seconds. First layer amplification complete. Thorn's reflect damage potency increased by 100. Bai Xiaochuan's eyes lit up instantly. The apology on his lips vanished. Instead of pulling away, he drew the 2 girls nearer to him. While others sought comfort in close company, he was risking his life to charge up his ability. Don't move. Bai Xiaochuan leaned beside Su Qinghan's shoulder and shouted. I'm charging a buff. Hold on another 15 seconds. You. Su Qinghan seethed with frustration. Glancing at the crumbling barrier overhead, she held back her resistance. She stiffened her frame, and the crimson flush on her ears crept down her neck. Chu Linger let out a quiet murmur of acknowledgement. She had witnessed the power of stacked traits before. Instead of pulling back, she stepped slightly closer to ensure their contact remained unbroken. Contact sustained for 10 seconds. Second layer amplification complete. Absolute penetration potency increased by 200. Boom. An anti-material bullet struck the center of the cracks. The entire amethyst barrier caved inward. The shock sent Bai Xiaochuan and the 2 women staggering backward. Su Qinghan planted a hand on his back to keep all 3 from collapsing in a heap. Bai Xiaochuan clenched his jaw. 5 more seconds. 4 seconds. 3 seconds. Crack. A thumb-wide rift split the center of the barrier. A bullet grazed past Bai Xiaochuan's temple, shearing off a strand of hair at his temple. 2 seconds. 1 second. Contact sustained for 15 seconds. Third layer stacking complete. Trait amplification has reached maximum threshold. Derived skills unlocked. Dragon Might Aura. 3 branching piercing breath. Dragon Might Aura. Suppresses consciousness of low-tier creatures within range. 3 branching piercing breath. A single breath attack splits into 3 streams, each retaining full penetrating power. Color flooded back into Bai Xiaochuan's face. Grant power. Violet and golden light surged into the black-scaled flood dragon's body. The dragon, which had kept low to the ground, threw its head upward sharply. Scales along its neck flared open. Within its dark golden vertical pupils, twin flames seemed to burn alive. Roar! A dragon's roar boomed outward. The sound rolled across the clearing, shaking swathes of leaves loose from the trees. All three helicopters lurched violently. Gunners in the cabin doors suffered a momentary mental fog, their fingers slowing on the triggers. Inside the cockpits, pilots felt a sharp pain in their eardrums, vision swimming darkly. Now was the chance. The black-scaled flood dragon opened its jaws. Golden light condensed to a pinpoint deep in its throat. In the next heartbeat, it split 3 ways. Boom. 3 bowl-thick streams of golden breath shot forth, targeting each helicopter separately. The first stream struck the leftmost transport's engine. The thick metal hull failed in less than a second, melting open like hot wax. Flames surged through the engine into the passenger cabin. Kaboom! The aircraft erupted into a fireball midair. Burning wreckage trailed black smoke, crashing heavily into the rainforest below. The second golden stream sliced horizontally through the middle helicopter's wing. Sizzle! The wing tore clean off at its root. The aircraft tilted drastically in midair, spiraling downward. The masked man aboard did not have time to strap on a parachute before the craft plummeted into the piles of corpses below. Crash! Clouds of rotten flesh and black blood surged upward several meters high. The pilot of the third helicopter descended into sheer panic. Climb altitude. Pull up. He hauled the control stick all the way back. The nose had barely lifted when the third breath stream grazed beneath the cockpit. Large sections of armor melted away instantly. The aircraft lost balance and lurched wildly in the sky. Trying to escape? The flood dragon's dark golden eyes locked firmly onto it. Its tail whipped out. A half-ton steel girder resting at its paws was sent flying. Whoosh! The girder cut through the air with an ear-splitting whistle, rocketing skyward. Crash! It pierced straight through the cockpit. Toughened glass exploded outward mixed with blood. The helicopter wobbled twice more in the air before losing all control. Its nose dipped downward. Boom! The third transport slammed into the mud, carving a trench more than 10 meters long. Flames burst from ruptured fuel tanks, quickly swallowing most of the fuselage. All 3 helicopters were destroyed. The man with the megaphone had jumped out before the aircraft crashed. His parachute deployed, only to snare itself in tree branches. He hung suspended 5 to 6 meters above the ground. He slipped free of the parachute harness, rolled upon landing, and instantly drew a flare gun from his waist. You dare attack the tournament committee's aircraft. He raised the gun toward the sky. By Xiaochuan, you'll pay. He never finished his sentence. A black gold tail swept toward him. Bang! The man flew like a sack of rags, slamming hard against a tree trunk. Crack! Bark splintered. He coughed up a mouthful of blood, slid down the trunk into the mud, and slumped unconscious, his head lolling to one side. The flare gun landed beside him, half submerged in black blood. Silence fell over the clearing. Only the crackle of burning aircraft wreckage remained. The stench of burning metal mingled with rot, pushed toward them by waves of heat. Bai Xiaochuan stood stunned for 2 heartbeats. It was then he realized he was still shielding his 2 companions close beside him. He quickly stepped back. His boot slipped again, nearly sending him tumbling into a pit of corpses. He scrambled to steady himself, unable to meet the eyes of the 2 girls beside him. Color spread all the way from his cheeks to the tips of his ears. Sorry. I slipped. It really wasn't intentional. His explanation sounded feeble even to his own ears, and he forced out another line. I was taking cover from gunfire. Su Qinghan rubbed her aching torso and tightened her grip on her sword hilt. She turned her face away, refusing to look at Bai Xiaochuan. The flush on her ears had yet to fade. After several seconds, she spoke coldly. If you lose control of your positioning again, I will sever your arms. Bai Xiaochuan flinched. Understood. Chu Linger knelt nearby, twisting the hem of her torn skirt, her face buried almost against her knees. Her voice was faint as a mosquito's buzz. It's fine, as long as we manage to charge the buff. Bai Xiaochuan had no idea how to respond. Fortunately, the black-scaled flood dragon padded over. It lowered its massive head and rubbed against Bai Xiaochuan's palm, rumbling deep in its throat. The tip of its tail swayed back and forth. Bai Xiaochuan stroked the black scales atop its head. All right, I see how strong you are. You're the best. The flood dragon narrowed its eyes in satisfaction. Bai Xiaochuan had barely relaxed when his peripheral vision caught movement within the wreckage of the third helicopter. Something stirred amid the flames. Clatter! A warped cabin door was kicked open from within. A man clad in silvery white tactical gear stepped out across smoldering debris. He stood nearly 2 meters tall. A brutal old scar stretched from his brow ridge down to his jaw. The violent crash that would have crushed an ordinary human left only a few scuff marks on his combat uniform. In his right hand, He dragged a thumb-thick black iron chain. The chain scraped against twisted metal, emitting a shrill grinding noise. Clank, clank. The opposite end of the chain slowly emerged from the fire, hauling forth a 2-meter-tall griffin corpse beast. Most of its feathers had rotted away. Decayed wings clung to its skeletal frame, flesh stripped from its talons to reveal bone caked in dried black blood. A pair of blood-red eyes locked onto by Xiaochuan through the flames. The man in silver-white gear gave the chain a light tug. The griffin corpse beast raised its head. Screech! A piercing shriek cut through the rainforest. Leaves showered down around them, and nearby flames were flattened outward by the shockwave. All color drained from Su Qinghan's face. She tightened her grip on her sword, staring at the insignia pinned to the man's chest. Platinum and gold. 3 full tiers higher than Zhao Hu's bronze badge. Bai Xiaochuan spotted it too. He subconsciously moved half a step closer to the flood dragon. The man in silver-white gear lifted a hand. Fingers stained with black blood pointed straight at Bai Xiaochuan across the burning wreckage. His voice was hoarse, like sandpaper scraping over timber. Sure enough, an S-class flood dragon. It is worth my coming personally. The silver-white-clad man stepped slowly forward across charred earth. The griffin corpse beast lumbered behind him at the end of the black chain. Half its feathers rotted away. Sulphurous fumes billowed from its nostrils with every labored breath. Several green ferns beside the path wilted and curled the moment the gas touched their leaves. Bai Xiaochuan's gaze fixed on the platinum gold insignia on the man's chest. This opponent was far stronger than Zhao Hu. He glanced down at the black-scaled flood dragon. After unleashing dragon might and the 3 branching breath in quick succession, the juvenile beast had exhausted its strength. The scales along its neck hung limp against its skin, its chest heaving rapidly. Not a wisp of golden flame could be summoned from its throat anymore. The griffin corpse beast advanced one more step. The flood dragon lowered its forepaws and let out a hoarse warning growl. Yet it did not lunge forward as it had before. It understood it could not win. A direct fight meant all of them would be torn apart by the griffin. Could they turn and run? The man's aura had locked onto their group. Turning their backs would leave them exposed as easy targets. Bai Xiaochuan ground his molars together. He needed to stack the traits one more time. 15 seconds. If he could gain another 15 seconds, they might still turn the tide. Without further hesitation, Bai Xiaochuan moved quickly to gather Su Qinghan and Chu Linger beside him, grouping the 3 of them together to maintain the necessary contact condition. Bai Xiaochuan. Su Qinghan raised her sword, only for her blade to swing sideways as he pulled her closer. The hilt thudded against Bai Xiaochuan's thigh. She stood pressed near him, icy blue eyes widening, ears blazing crimson. What are you doing? Su Qinghan instinctively shifted to push away, but she caught sight of Bai Xiaochuan's wounded shoulder. Her movement halted. She rested the sword hilt firmly against his leg as a silent warning. Chu Linger gasped, her cheeks flushing hotly. But she glanced at the griffin 10 meters away, bit her lip, and did not pull away. She even edged closer to ensure their contact remained unbroken. Quiet. Bai Xiaochuan stared intently at his system panel. This is for survival, don't shift positions. He stabilized the group formation. Under ordinary circumstances, social anxiety would have overwhelmed him. Right now, only one thought burned in his mind. Stack. Keep stacking the traits. If 3 layers were insufficient, push for 5. If 5 failed, aim for 10. He would defeat this arrogant opponent today, no matter what. 1 second. 3 seconds. 5 seconds. The system panel stayed dead silent. No amplification notification appeared, not even a single character of text. The griffin corpse beast drew nearer. The black chain dragged across scorched metal, sending forth that shrill scraping noise. Clank, clank. Each sound rang like a death knell. Bai Xiaochuan's eyes strained. At last, the panel lit up. Only gray text rolled across the screen. Warning, potential of marked targets already extracted to current phase limit. Further extraction or stacking impossible. Remaining cooldown, 23 hours, 50 minutes. Notice, sustained contact yields no additional benefits. Host advised to maintain appropriate bearing. The determined look on Bai Xiaochuan froze instantly. A bead of sweat slid down from the cut on his forehead to his chin. It was over. This cheat skill carried an internal cooldown. No stacked buff had activated. All he had managed was to create an awkward misunderstanding. Have you finished? Su Qinghan bit her lower lip, her voice strained. Chu Linger asked quietly, what about your amplification ability? That, Bai Xiaochuan slowly eased the group apart and stepped backward. His gaze drifted from Su Qinghan's face to the ground, then toward a charred tree stump. Nice weather today. Maybe the signal was disrupted earlier. My skill activation got interrupted. A heavy silence descended. Veins twitched faintly on the back of Su Qinghan's hand. Her sword hummed, frigid aura rolling off the blade. If the platinum-tier enemy were not standing before them, she would strike by Xiaochuan down this instant. Chu Linger stepped back half a pace, cheeks flushed, twisting her skirt nervously. Yet she did not retreat farther. Instead, she subtly positioned herself half in front of Bai Xiaochuan, one hand reaching for her last packets of toxic powder. Finished exchanging final words? The silver-white-clad man halted 10 meters away. He gave the black chain a gentle tug. The griffin corpse beast dropped low to the ground, unfurling its decaying wings. Sharp bone talons dug into the mud, gouging half-foot grooves with a single scrape. Through clouds of sulfur fumes, he fixed his gaze on Bai Xiaochuan. Surrender the dragon. I will grant the three of you a clean death. Bai Xiaochuan spat blood from his mouth. All traces of awkwardness vanished from his expression. Trait stacking was no longer an option. They would have to fight for their lives. His eyes swept rapidly over the battlefield. 15 meters to his right rested the wreckage of the third transport helicopter. A ruptured fuel tank continued to leak. Dark blue aviation fuel streamed down the fuselage, pooling thickly in a muddy depression. The pungent fumes intensified in the surrounding heat. 3 meters to his left lay a scout's oilcloth pack. An uncapped vial of berserk elixir jutted out of the muck. Black flocculence inside swirled violently within the liquid, stirred by the ambient heat. Chu Linger still possessed her toxic powder. Though exhausted, the black-scaled flood dragon retained a trace of golden fire between its fangs. Bai Xiaochuan's gaze moved from the poison powder to the elixir, then locked onto the pool of aviation fuel. Linger, deploy the poison powder. Bai Xiaochuan shouted sharply. Chu Linger reacted without hesitation. She flicked her wrist, launching her remaining 3 packets of rot poison powder into the air. Pop! The paper packets burst mid-flight. A cloud of grayish powder surged forward, sweeping toward the man and the griffin. Trifling trick. The man did not shift an inch. The griffin corpse beast beat its rotting wings violently. Whoosh! A putrid gust rolled across the ground. The poison powder was blown backward before it could reach its target. Thick gray haze obscured everyone's line of sight. Now, Bai Xiaochuan kicked the oilcloth pack upward. The berserk elixir bottle flew into the air. He caught the neck of the vial with his uninjured hand, twisted his torso, and hurled it hard toward the fuel pool more than 10 meters away. The glass bottle arced through the air. Lizard! Bai Xiaochuan roared. The black-scaled flood dragon shared his senses. It dug its foreclaws firmly into the ground, tilted its head back, and opened its jaws. A wheezing rumble echoed from its chest. Uft! A golden spark no bigger than a fingernail finally shot out from between its fangs. The berserk potion fell into the fuel pit first. Pop! The glass bottle shattered. Black liquid spread rapidly through the dark blue aviation fuel, covering the mud pit's surface with countless bubbling pockets. The golden spark descended right after. The man's pupils constricted sharply. Not good. He yanked hard on the iron chain, preparing to retreat. But the spark had already landed. You dare! Boom! Blinding light swallowed the entire clearing in an instant. The berserk potion detonated first, and its chaotic energy ignited the pool of aviation fuel. 2 explosions overlapped, sending a churning fire cloud surging skyward. Shockwaves rolled outward along the ground. Shattered steel plates, broken timber, and scattered debris were hurled high into the air. The remaining half of the third transport aircraft was flipped over by the blast and crashed heavily onto the pile of beast corpses. The man in the silver combat uniform bore the brunt of the explosion. He barely had time to lift his arms to shield his head before the blast wave sent him flying. The griffin beast let out a shrill cry, spreading its rotting wings in front of itself, yet its massive body was still forced several steps backward. The black iron chain stretched taut in an instant. Let's go. The moment the shockwave swept back, Bai Xiaochuan grabbed Su Qinghan's wrist, seized Chu Lingling with his other hand, and leaped onto the black-scaled flood dragon's back. Northwest. Leveraging the blast's momentum, the dragon scrabbled at the ground with all 4 paws. Mud and water sprayed behind it. Carrying the 3 humans, it charged straight into the misty rainforest. Shrubs snapped, branches and leaves flying everywhere. In the blink of an eye, the 3 humans and the dragon vanished deep within the thick fog. 2 minutes later, the flames gradually died down. A silver combat boot stepped onto a charred broken log. Crunch! The embers were snuffed out. The man emerged from the smoke. Large sections of his silver combat uniform were scorched black, and a twisted metal shard jutted from his right shoulder. The old scar across his face was stained black by smoke. Half of his eyebrows burned away. He reached up and pulled the shard free. Dark red blood streamed down his arm. Yet he still clutched the black iron chain tightly in his palm, seeking death. Deep within the misty rainforest, a stone crevice tangled with toxic vines lay beneath a cliff. Thick moss hung down, concealing the entrance completely. Bai Xiaochuan squeezed into the crevice, leaned back against the cold rock wall, and slowly slid down to sit. Adrenaline had sustained him through the escape. Now that they were safe, searing pain crashed over him from his left shoulder. He gritted his teeth hard enough to draw blood on his lower lip. This natural cave had been discovered by Su Qinghan during their retreat. The entrance was narrow, but the cavern stretched deep inside. Rusty metal supports lined the rock walls, signs that a research team had once converted this place into an underground shelter. No one knew what disaster had struck later. Toxic vines sealed the entrance, and the site was abandoned. For the three of them now, it made a perfect hiding spot. The black-scaled flood dragon lay across the entrance. Its massive head rested on its front paws, eyelids drooping, chest rising and falling steadily as it fell into exhausted snores. Non-stop battles, followed by rushing through the rainforest carrying 3 people, had drained nearly all the stamina the juvenile beast possessed. Don't move. Chu Lingling crouched before Bai Xiaochuan. Her white dance outfit was caked in mud and sweat, barely recognizable. She paid no mind to her own condition, instead untying a small clay jar from her waist. The jar held crushed dark green medicinal herbs. A sharp bitter scent wafted out the moment she opened it. Bai Xiaochuan instinctively leaned back, but shifting his left shoulder unleashed a wave of agony racing down his arm. His face paled, and he froze at once. Chu Lingling's cool fingers slipped beneath his torn jacket collar, gently peeling fabric stuck to his wound free. They sat very close. If Bai Xiaochuan tilted his head slightly, he could see her trembling eyelashes. Chu Lingling paid no attention to their proximity. Her gaze locked onto the deep, bone-exposing gash, and she pressed the herbal paste into the wound with careful fingertips. The moment the medicinal mud touched raw flesh, Bai Xiaochuan's whole body tensed. Go easy. I'm already being as gentle as I can. Chu Lingling pressed her lips together. If we don't treat this wound, you might lose the use of your arm. As she spoke, her fingertips brushed Bai Xiaochuan's taut chest. Bai Xiaochuan API stiffened for a split second and quickly looked away, pretending nothing had happened. If he kept staring, he feared his nervous awkwardness would flare up before his injury even healed. Further inside the cavern, Su Qinghan knelt beside a pile of damp firewood. She ran her sword along the rock wall. Screech. Sparks flew, and a small smokeless fire ignited among the timber. Once done, she leaned against the stone wall with her sword held tight, her cold gaze settling on Bai Xiaochuan. You used the berserk potion to trigger the aviation fuel explosion. Su Qinghan paused briefly. Quick thinking. Coming from her, that was high praise. What other choice did I have? Bai Xiaochuan tugged at the corner of his mouth. Stay there and get captured by that scar-faced man? He tried shifting into a more comfortable posture, only to jostle his shoulder wound. His face contorted in pain. Chu Lingling hastily held him still. I told you not to move. Fine, fine. I won't. Bai Xiaochuan leaned back against the rock, his gaze sweeping over the 2 girls, shaking off the lingering awkwardness. He brought up a new topic. Speaking of which, there's something I've never understood. He picked up a thin twig and prodded a stone at his feet. We entered this island to take part in the Beast Tamer survival trial. I get that Lingling isn't a strong fighter. But Minister Su, you're the top fighter of the swordsmanship division. From Wang Ming's harassment up until now, I haven't seen either of you summon your contracted beasts. Silence fell across the cavern, broken only by the crackle of burning firewood. Chu Lingling's hands paused mid-treatment. She lowered her head and pressed her lips tightly together. Su Qinghan's reaction was even more obvious. Her normally icy face stiffened, her grip on the sword sheath tightening. She then turned her head aside, refusing to meet Bai Xiaochuan's eyes. Bai Xiaochuan blinked. Did I ask something I shouldn't? No. Chu Lingling whispered. She sealed the clay jar, hesitated for a moment, then slowly stretched out her right hand. Xiaokai, come out. A faint wisp of white light flickered. Bai Xiaochuan leaned forward to watch. Resting on Chu Lingling's palm was a spider the size of a walnut. Its body was round, marked with several colorful stripes across its back. Its 8 legs were as thin as threads, fragile enough to be blown away by a strong gust of wind. The moment it emerged, it noticed Bai Xiaochuan staring. The tiny creature shuddered all over. It lifted its 2 front legs to cover its head, hiding its grain-sized eyes, trembling non-stop on Chu Lingling's palm. Bai Xiaochuan fell silent for 2 seconds. Wow, even shyer than I am. This is the iridescent spider. Chu Lingling's voice grew softer. Iron Tier 1 star. It can consume toxic plants and produce the corrosive poison powder I used earlier. But its venom is very weak. Apart from that, it can't even kill ordinary insects. That's why I've never dared summon it. Bai Xiaochuan understood. A standard low-tier support beast. In ordinary circumstances, it might serve as a tool for making poisons. On this deadly island, summoning it would be no different from offering it to the corpse beasts as food. He turned towards Su Qinghan. What about you? Surely the sword prodigy didn't contract a useless little creature too? Su Qinghan's expression darkened visibly. She took a deep breath, as if forcing herself to make a difficult decision. Come forth. Her voice was cold enough to freeze water. A flash of silver light appeared in the air. Then, splat. A translucent white blob of gel crashed onto the stone floor. It had no limbs. Simply a soft sphere roughly 10 centimeters across. It bounced twice after landing, then slowly crept towards Su Qinghan's boot. A small hole opened in the center of its round body, aimed straight at Bai Xiaochuan. Puffed. A transparent bubble the size of a fist shot out. The bubble drifted slowly through the air. Pop. It burst. It could not harm anyone. It did not even ruffle a single strand of Bai Xiaochuan's bangs. Bai Xiaochuan clamped his mouth shut tightly, yet his shoulders shook uncontrollably. Head of the Swordsmanship Division. Cold, admired campus beauty. Her contracted beast only knew how to blow bubbles. The contrast was almost absurd. Sword Chi Slime. Su Qinghan closed her eyes, unwilling to face reality. Species Potential Assessment, Unlimited Ceiling. Current rank, Iron Tier 2 star. Its only method of attack is the bubble you just saw. Bai Xiaochuan struggled to hold back his laughter. But the words unlimited ceiling quickly calmed him down. Weak now did not mean permanently powerless. It simply lacked the right path to grow. His gaze shifted back and forth between the iridescent spider and the sword chi slime. A sudden thought crossed his mind. Up to this point, he had only applied tags to his own lizard. Yet the system had never stated that tags could only be used on his own contracted beasts. Could they be used on others' beasts? Bai Xiaochuan focused his mind and opened his system panel. Detecting host intention. Temporary tag grant function activated. Description: when the host is in a party with a target, and the target holds basic trust with the host with favorability meeting the threshold. The host may expend mental power to grant own tags to the target's contracted beasts temporarily. Available targets for temporary grant. Chu Lingling, Trust level 100. Su Qinghan, Trust level 80. Bai Xiaochuan's eyes lit up. He could share them. His tags worked for his own beast, and he could temporarily lend tags to his teammates' contracted beasts. This was far more than a personal cheat. It was a team resource advantage. He would squeeze every ounce of value he could from this system ability. Bai Xiaochuan's smile faded. He pushed himself upright against the rock wall and fixed his gaze on the iridescent spider resting on Chu Lingling's palm. Lingling set Xiaokai down on the ground. Though confused, Chu Lingling knelt and gently placed the iridescent spider on the rock between them. The spider immediately tried scurrying back into her sleeve. Chu Lingling brushed a fingertip lightly against its head. It stilled, yet its 8 thin legs continued trembling. Bai Xiaochuan looked toward Chu Lingling. I'm going to run a test on it. I can't predict what will happen. If the test fails, it might die. He spoke slowly and clearly. Do you trust me? Chu Lingling glanced down at Xiaokai. The small spider lowered the legs covering its eyes and carefully tapped her fingertip. Chu Lingling pressed her lips together. When she lifted her head again, there was no hesitation. I trust you. One simple word. It caught Bai Xiaochuan off guard for a moment. Very well. He exhaled and raised his right hand. His palm hovered less than an inch above the iridescent spider. A purple tag glowed bright on his system panel. Absolute toxin. System. Bai Xiaochuan stared at Xiaokai. Grant. Hum. Purple ripples spread outward from his palm and surged straight into the iridescent spider's body. A sharp pain stabbed through Bai Xiaochuan's temples. It felt as if a red-hot nail was driven directly into his brain. Vast amounts of mental power drained away in an instant, and his vision blurred. At the same time, air currents churned wildly inside the cavern. SSSS. The iridescent spider arched its body and let out a shrill hiss. The sound rang painfully in their ears. Far too loud to come from such a tiny bug. The colorful stripes on its back twisted and shifted. Its 8 delicate legs stretched and thickened inch by inch. Fine purple-black lines spreading across their surfaces. SSSS. SSSS. The iridescent spider opened its jaws wide. Thick purple-black silk gushed out, twisting and weaving through the air. 1 layer. 2 layers. 3. In less than 10 seconds, a heavy cocoon the size of a basketball formed on the rock, completely wrapping the spider. The cocoon glowed with eerie violet light, lined with tiny black thorns all over its surface. Thud! The cocoon jerked once. The entire cavern shook faintly. Thud! The second jolt. Dark toxic frost spread across the nearby rock walls, and the fire's flames dimmed noticeably. Chu Lingling covered her mouth abruptly. The beast contract mark on her wrist burned hot, glowing purple little by little. Every time the cocoon pulsed, her heart pounded violently. The fragile spiritual link between her and Xiaokai was being forcefully widened by overwhelming power. Xiaokai! She instinctively stepped forward. Su Qinghan stood straight at once, sliding her sword half out of its sheath. Frigid sword chi spread along the ground, blocking the spreading toxic frost away from the three of them. She stared at the purple cocoon, then looked at Bai Xiaochuan, pale and sweating heavily. In just a dozen seconds, he was forcibly rewriting a contracted beast's evolutionary path. This surpassed a mere mutation. Crack! A thin fissure split the cocoon's surface. A ray of deeper violet light seeped out through the gap. Crack! A sharp snap echoed through the dim cavern. Bai Xiaochuan leaned against the rock wall, his eyes locked firmly on the basketball-sized purple cocoon. His left hand pressed against his throbbing temples. It felt as if a drill whirled relentlessly inside his skull. Forcing a tag transfer across separate contracts had nearly emptied his mental power reserves. But he did not look away. The fine black thorns covering the cocoon stood upright one by one. Chu Lingling stood 3 steps away, tightly clutching her tattered skirt. The contract rune glowing on her wrist blazed brightly, violet black light creeping up her skin toward her elbow. Xiaokai! Her voice trembled. She shifted her weight forward half a step, then halted herself. She could sense the terrifying, raging power on the other end of their bond. The once thin spiritual thread connecting them was now expanded into a raging river. Su Qinghan tightened her grip on her sword. Ice blue sword chi spread along the ground, holding the outward spreading toxic frost confined within a 3-foot radius around the cocoon. She glanced at the glowing rune on Chu Lingling's wrist, then returned her gaze to the cocoon. Crack! Crack! Fractures snaked rapidly across the cocoon shell. Thick clouds of purple-black mist billowed from the gaps. Where the mist touched the stone floor, a harsh, sizzling sound echoed. White smoke rose, and deep thumb-sized corrosion pits appeared on the hard rock in an instant. Su Qinghan's pupils shrank. She tilted her wrist and lowered her sword edge further, thickening the sword chi barrier. Step back, she warned coolly, stepping sideways to position herself protectively in front of Chu Lingling. Bang! The purple cocoon exploded completely. Viscous purple fluid splattered across the rock walls, burning black craters wherever it landed. Bai Xiaochuan squinted, peering through the lingering toxic mist. No towering monster emerged as he had expected. Resting on the stone was a spider barely larger than an open palm. It was only slightly bigger than the original iridescent spider, yet its once rounded body now bore sharp, angular contours. Its whole form was deep violet black, marked with 3 eerie golden lines across its carapace. Most terrifying of all were its 8 legs. No longer fragile threads, they had transformed into 8 miniature purple crystal blades, edges shimmering with sinister light, small barbs sprouting at each joint. It remained motionless on the stone, releasing no detectable aura. Yet the air within a 3-meter radius warped faintly just from its presence. A system panel materialized before Bai Xiaochuan's eyes. Target, Shadow Venom Spider Juvenile. Combat Tier, Silver Tier 1 Star. Growth Aptitude, Grade A originally Grade F. Bloodline Race, Ferocious Species evolved from common species through restructuring. Fuse Tag, Absolute Toxin Purple. Abilities, Corrosive Poison Web, Shadow Ambush. Silver Tier 1 Star. Not only that, its growth aptitude and bloodline had undergone a staggering leap forward. Bai Xiaochuan tried to smile, only to wince as the movement split his dry lips. According to the world's rules, low-grade bloodlines could never bear high-tier rule tags. But the rare purple tag, Absolute Toxin, had forcibly restructured the iridescent spider's biology. To survive, the creature had no choice but to surge toward a higher ferocious species bloodline. Its combat strength had skipped the entire bronze tier, jumping 2 major ranks. The heavy toll of draining nearly all his mental power was well worth it. The Shadow Venom spider moved. It raised its 2 front legs and scraped them against one another, producing an unnerving metallic screech. Then it turned its glowing red compound eyes toward the broken cocoon shell on the ground. Crunch! It took a bite. The cocoon, potent enough to dissolve stone, crunched like brittle biscuits between its fangs. It swallowed every scrap within a few bites. After finishing the shell, it pushed off the stone with all 8 legs. Whoosh! Only a streak of purple shadow remained in the air. Su Qinghan's eyes sharpened. She twisted her wrist and instinctively lifted her sword upward. "Don't attack!" Chu Lingling cried out hastily. Su Qinghan froze mid-strike, her sword suspended in the air. The purple shadow landed gently on Chu Lingling's shoulder. The shadow venom spider folded its 8 sharp limbs, carefully avoiding her neck and resting its abdomen against her clothing. It rubbed softly against Chu Lingling's cheek, emitting quiet hissing sounds. Chu Lingling stiffened, not daring to breathe too deeply. She turned her head to look at the deadly venomous beast perched on her shoulder, and tears slowly welled in her eyes. "Xiaokai," she called tentatively. The venom spider immediately lifted one front leg and rested it lightly against her earlobe, its movement surprisingly gentle. Chu Lingling's tears spilled over. On this merciless island, she had always felt like a burden, unable to even protect her own contracted beast. Now, she finally possessed the means to defend herself. She spun around abruptly and strode over to Bai Xiaochuan. "Bai Xiaochuan, thank you." Overwhelmed with emotion, she did not know what to do with her hands. In the end, she grabbed Bai Xiaochuan's uninjured right hand and shook it firmly. His palm felt icy cold, and Chu Linger's hands trembled faintly. Bai Xiaochuan's vision swam from the vigorous shaking. The dizziness in his head doubled in an instant. He forced out a faint smile. "Stop shaking me. You'll knock me unconscious." Chu Linger quickly let go. Pink tinted her cheeks as she stepped back half a pace. Su Qinghan stood rooted to the spot, quietly watching the scene unfold. Her gaze lingered for a long time on the sharp limb blades of the shadow venom spider before drifting down to the ground beside her feet. A clump of translucent white gel lay there. The sword chi slime seemed to sense its master's stare. It wriggled sluggishly, and a small hole opened at its center. Pop! A transparent bubble floated out and collided with the toe of Su Qinghan's boot. It burst. Su Qinghan closed her eyes and took a deep breath. She loosened her grip on her sword, only to clench it tightly once more. Her usual icy, unapproachable face showed an uncharacteristic trace of awkwardness. She lifted her foot and gently nudged the slime with her boot. The slime rolled across the stone floor like a ball and came to rest right beside Bai Xiaochuan's feet. Seemingly finding the spot comfortably warm, it flattened itself into a broad disc and stayed motionless. Leaning against the rock wall, Bai Xiaochuan stared at the gel disc at his feet, then looked up towards Su Qinghan. "Minister Su, what was that about?" Su Qinghan turned her head away, her eyes fixed on the blazing campfire. Dancing flames cast light across her fair profile, clearly illuminating the faint pink at the tip of her ear. "It rolled over here on its own," she said, her voice tight. Bai Xiaochuan fought back the throbbing pain in his head and wore a teasing grin. "Oh, it moved by itself. I thought Minister Su grew envious of Linger's spider and wanted your own beast to get a power boost too." Su Qinghan whipped her head back, ice blue eyes boring into him. "Cut the nonsense." She bit her lower lip, her tone softening. "That ability of yours, what conditions must be met to use it?" Seeing the normally lofty sword department minister acting so awkwardly as she asked for help, all trace of his social anxiety vanished from Bai Xiaochuan's mind. "You already know the conditions." He lifted his right hand and waved it in the air. "Physical contact is required, and my mental strength has to hold up." Su Qinghan stared at his hand, her breath catching for a split second. She took a step forward. Her military boots clicked sharply against the broken stones. "If I ask you right now," her sentence trailed off unfinished. Suddenly, warmth flooded Bai Xiaochuan's nostrils. A stream of liquid trickled down from his nose and dripped onto his chin. He instinctively raised a hand to wipe it. Blood coated his fingers. Immediately afterward, the world around him began to spin violently. The campfire's light twisted into a tangled mess, and a shrill buzzing filled his ears. "Bai Xiaochuan." Chu Linger's cry sounded distant, muffled as if heard underwater. Bai Xiaochuan's legs buckled, and he toppled backward uncontrollably. Boom! His back crashed heavily against the rock wall. The solid stone emitted a hollow echo on impact. Crack! The rock slab he leaned against caved inward abruptly. He lost his balance entirely and tumbled straight into a pitch-black cavity. "Grab him!" Su Qinghan reacted instantly. She tossed her long sword aside and seized Bai Xiaochuan's arm. Yet the collapse spread wider than expected. Stones clattered downward. Su Qinghan lost her footing, dragging Chu Linger along with her. The three slid down a steep stone incline together. Darkness swallowed them whole. Far within the hole, a faint emerald glow flickered to life. A crushing sense of weightlessness clutched at their hearts. Wind screamed past their eardrums like a blunt blade, making their heads throb. Bai Xiaochuan had already lost consciousness. The wound on his left shoulder tore open further during the fall, blood streaming from his arm into the air. Su Qinghan twisted her torso mid-fall. Her left hand clamped tightly onto Bai Xiaochuan's collar, while her right drove the sword hard into the rock wall beside them. Screech! The blade scraped along the stone as they descended, sending sparks flying. Their falling speed slowed slightly. It was far from enough. Su Qinghan's tiger split open, blood dripping down the hilt. Gritting her teeth, her ice-blue eyes locked onto the depths below. The space beneath was shrouded in complete darkness. Only a few pinpricks of emerald light floated far down below. No one knew how much farther they had to drop. Linger! Su Qinghan called sharply. 3 meters above her, Chu Linger was also plummeting rapidly. She lacked Su Qinghan's combat prowess, but she had her newly evolved Shadow Venom Spider. Little Kai! Chu Linger shielded her head, her voice nearly torn apart by the wind. Weave a web. The Shadow Venom Spider perched on her shoulder sprang into action at once. Its 8 purple crystal limb blades snapped wide. Its abdomen contracted. Puffed. Vast streams of purple-black silk burst forth. The threads billowed in the wind, quickly spreading outward to form a giant web over 10 meters wide, anchoring firmly to the rock walls on both sides. Thud! Su Qinghan and Bai Xiaochuan crashed into the center of the web first. The silk net sagged violently under the impact, drawn taut like a fully bent bow. Thick strands of spider silk creaked ominously under the strain, but they did not break. Chu Linger slammed into the web right after. The net bounced upward once, twice, 3 times. On the final descent, all momentum from the fall was finally dissipated. Su Qinghan released her grip on Bai Xiaochuan's collar and let out a long breath. She pushed herself upright using the web for support. Little Kai, lower us down. Chu Linger gasped, her body still trembling. The Shadow Venom Spider lifted its forelimbs. Threads along the web's edges dissolved away. The 3 slid down the sloped surface of the web and landed on cold, solid bluestone ground. As soon as she steadied herself, Su Qinghan held her sword out before her. Her gaze swept across the surroundings. They stood inside a massive underground cavern. The air reeked of stale mold, mixed with a faint trace of blood. Above them stretched the bottomless fall pit, with no glimmer of daylight reaching this depth. Clusters of emerald green moss dotted the surrounding rock walls. The faint glow wavered, barely revealing the cavern's outline. Bai Xiaochuan. Chu Linger paid no heed to their surroundings and scrambled over to his side. Bai Xiaochuan lay flat on the stone slabs, eyes shut tight. The wound on his left shoulder was horrific. His collarbone, already fractured by Zhao Hu's attack, had shifted completely during the fall. Pale bone protruded through torn flesh. His face was drained of all color, and his breathing grew shallow and faint. Aggravated old injuries, severe blood loss, plus mental strength nearly exhausted after granting the ability trait. All these burdens combined had knocked him unconscious. So much blood. Chu Linger froze mid-motion, afraid to touch him carelessly. Her eyes reddened with anxiety as she hurried to unfasten the medicinal jar at her waist. Step aside. Su Qinghan strode forward and held Chu Linger's hand back. She pressed her index and middle fingers together. A wisp of pale ice-blue sword chi hovered above her fingertips. In the next instant, she tapped several points around Bai Xiaochuan's left shoulder. Sword chi seeped into the wound. The gushing blood quickly stemmed, and a thin layer of frost formed along the edges of the injury. The bone is dislocated. Su Qinghan frowned deeply. If we reset it now, the pain will jolt him awake. She glanced at Bai Xiaochuan's ashen face. His mental strength is completely depleted. Such intense agony could send him straight into shock. Chu Linger clenched her lower lip. She looked down at the contract totem still faintly warm on her wrist. If it were not for helping little Kai evolve, Bai Xiaochuan would never have been weakened to this state. I will tend to the wound. Chu Linger spoke softly, yet her tone carried restrained resolve. She turned toward the Shadow Venom Spider. Little Kai, trim the ragged flesh along the wound's edge. Be careful not to strike the bone. The Shadow Venom Spider crept silently to Bai Xiaochuan's shoulder. It raised one forelimb. The purple crystal blade glinted coldly beneath the emerald glow. Swish! Without hesitation, the limb blade sliced along the exposed bone, neatly cutting away the torn flesh surrounding the wound. Bai Xiaochuan's body twitched violently. Su Qinghan immediately pressed down on his right arm and shoulder to hold him still. Apply the medicine. Chu Linger hurriedly scooped up a large lump of dark green medicinal paste and pressed it onto the wound. Agony pierced through his unconsciousness. Bai Xiaochuan gasped sharply, his eyes flying open. His vision blurred for 2 heartbeats before gradually clearing. Something soft lay beneath the back of his head. He shifted his head slightly on impulse. Get up once you're awake. Su Qinghan's frigid voice came from above. Bai Xiaochuan stiffened. He slowly lifted his eyes. First, he saw Su Qinghan's stern, icy expression. Then he turned his head sideways. He was resting his head squarely on Su Qinghan's thighs. Chu Linger knelt over his torso, pressing bandages firmly against the injury on his left shoulder. They were so close he barely dared draw breath. Boom. Every trace of composure vanished from Bai Xiaochuan's mind. Color rushed all the way to the tips of his ears. Whoa! He rolled hastily to the side. Why are you moving? Su Qinghan and Chu Linger exclaimed at the same time. The abrupt roll strained the freshly dressed wound on Bai Xiaochuan's shoulder. Excruciating pain washed over him. His features twisted, yet he suppressed any cry of pain. He cradled his injured shoulder with his left hand, pushed himself up with his right, and shuffled backward 2 steps. Well, Bai Xiaochuan's gaze darted everywhere, avoiding looking directly at the 2 girls. I didn't want to put undue strain on you. Besides, propriety matters. It wouldn't be appropriate out here deep underground. Veins pulsed faintly on the back of Su Qinghan's hand. She rose slowly to her feet. Her grip on the sword loosened, then tightened once more. If you utter another word, I will dislocate your other arm as well. Chu Linger knelt on the stone ground, cheeks flushed, and muttered quietly. You weren't so particular while you were unconscious. Bai Xiaochuan pretended not to hear. He fought through the pounding ache in his skull and scanned their surroundings quickly, seeking a distraction. It was the instinct of someone uncomfortable with awkward situations. This place feels strange. Bai Xiaochuan stared at the glowing moss on the rock walls. We're far underground, so why is the ground paved with dressed bluestone slabs? He scraped away thick dust with the toe of his boot. The stone beneath was smooth and polished, bearing marks of artificial shaping along its edges. Su Qinghan walked over to the rock face. She used her sword tip to brush aside a patch of moss. Underneath lay a heavily rusted metal plate. The emblem carved into it had faded badly, yet the pattern of 3 crossed swords remained distinguishable. Su Qinghan's voice sank low. It's the tournament committee's symbol. Bai Xiaochuan narrowed his eyes. All right, we didn't simply fall into a random pit. We've stumbled straight into the tournament committee's hidden map zone. Su Qinghan shot him a sharp glance, and Bai Xiaochuan fell silent at once. Not far away, the black-scaled flood dragon had been summoned out of its beast-tamer space. It lay on the ground, gasping heavily. Endless battles, flight, and prior exhaustion had dulled the luster of the scales along its neck. It could barely lift its head. Chu Linger's shadow venom spider perched quietly atop the metal plate. Its 8 scarlet compound eyes stared fixedly deeper into the cavern. Drip, drip. Odd sounds echoed out of the darkness. It sounded like thick liquid falling onto stone. Bai Xiaochuan tilted his head and listened carefully for a moment. It was not merely dripping. There was also the sound of crunching. Crack, crack, as if something was gnawing on bones. Su Qinghan held her sword diagonally toward the ground. Ice blue sword chi swiftly coated the blade. Something is approaching. Chu Linger stepped to Bai Xiaochuan's side. The shadow venom spider lowered its body and slowly spread its 8 limb blades. From the darkness, a pair of scarlet eyes lit up. Then a second pair. A third. More and more red glimmers ignited deep within the cavern. The scraping of limbs against stone grew denser, drawing steadily closer. A putrid gust of wind surged out from the cavern depths. Bai Xiaochuan looked ahead. Illuminated by the faint emerald moss, hordes of grayish-brown giant spiders emerged from the shadows. Cave rock spiders. Each one was larger than a wolfhound. Their heavy carapaces scraped against the bluestone, producing grating screeches. Barbs lined every spider leg. Their mouth parts opened and closed, and venom dripped onto the stone, hissing and forming thin white smoke. More than 20 of them, and still more continued to crawl out. A system panel flickered open. Target, Cave Rock Spider Pack Creature. Combat Tier, Bronze 2-star. Race Bloodline, Common Species. Traits, Hard Carapace, Venom induces paralysis. Bai Xiaochuan's brows drew together. Under ordinary circumstances, these Bronze 2-star low-tier monsters could be sent flying with a single sweep of the flood dragon's tail. But the dragon was still worn out, unable to stand. His left shoulder was severely wounded, and his mental strength was depleted. A direct fight would spell significant trouble. I will hold off the first wave. Su Qinghan stepped forward with her sword raised. Ice blue sword chi spreading along the ground. Take him and retreat. There's no need to fall back. Chu Linger suddenly spoke. Her voice was quiet, yet filled with unprecedented confidence. Su Qinghan turned to glance at her. Chu Linger raised her hand and pointed toward the advancing spider horde. Little Kai. The shadow venom spider perched on the rock wall spread its 8-limb blades slightly. The foremost cave rock spider leaped suddenly. Its bulky body cut through the foul air, charging straight for Chu Linger. 5 meters. 3 meters. 1 meter. Swish. The shadow venom spider vanished on the spot. Mid-air, the rock spider stiffened abruptly. A thin purple-black line split its heavy carapace, stretching from head to tail. Thud! The rock spider crashed to the ground, split neatly into 2 halves. Purple-black venom spread outward from the cut, turning flesh and shell black and causing them to dissolve. The remaining spiders halted all at once. Primitive terror flickered within their scarlet compound eyes. A common species facing a feral species. This was suppression etched deep within their bloodline. The shadow venom spider landed in front of the spider pack. It was only palm-sized, seemingly insignificant surrounded by the giant spiders. Yet it lifted 2 forelimbs and scraped its blades together. Hiss! A piercing shriek echoed through the cavern. In the next instant, purple light burst forth. Shadow instant slay. Bai Xiaochuan only saw a purple-black afterimage darting back and forth through the horde. Every flash brought a shattered carapace. Every pause meant another spider fell. There were no screeches. Venom seeped into their bodies faster than pain could register. In less than 10 seconds, the remains of over 20 bronze 2-star cave rock spiders littered the ground. The shadow venom spider returned to Chu Linger's feet and slowly brushed fragments of prey from its mouthparts with its limbs. Chu Linger knelt first to check that none of its limb blades had sustained damage before letting out a quiet breath of relief. Bai Xiaochuan stared at the broken shells covering the stone, his atoms apple-bobbing. A silver-tier creature taking on a swarm of bronze-tier foes. It really is as simple as slicing vegetables. Chu Linger's ears turned pink as she murmured. Little Kai only reached this stage thanks to your help with its evolution. Credit still belongs to you. Bai Xiaochuan said earnestly. I have no qualms leaning on your strength. Chu Linger twisted the hem of her clothes and offered no retort. Su Qinghan sheathed her sword, her gaze fixed firmly on the shadow venom spider. A cloud silk spider that was once merely iron 1-star had its bloodline forcibly rewritten by Xiaochuan, leaping straight past bronze to reach silver. By all established beast tamer knowledge, such a transformation should have been impossible. Let us find a way forward first. She cut across their conversation in a cool tone. Bai Xiaochuan pushed himself upright, leaning against the rock wall for support. These rock spiders built their nest here, so something valuable must be nearby. The 3 circled around an enormous stalagmite. The cavern widened ahead. Against the wall stood 3 silver-gray metal chests covered in thick dust, though the faded sword emblem was still visible on their surfaces. A rusted medicinal shelf lay broken beside them, with shattered transport tracks scattered across the stone. This was no natural cavern. It was an underground supply outpost left behind by the tournament committee. Bai Xiaochuan's eyes lit up. They hid this place so deep. Their supplies ought to be substantial. He stepped forward and tugged at the lock of the first chest. It was rusted shut and would not budge. Stand aside. Su Qinghan stepped forward and swung her sword downward. Crack. The lock snapped off. The lid sprang open. Dozens of light blue medical gel tubes sat neatly arranged inside, alongside several packs of concentrated rations. Tend to your wound first, Su Qinghan said. Bai Xiaochuan did not hesitate. He bit open one gel tube and squeezed its contents onto the injury on his left shoulder. A cool sensation seeped into the torn flesh. The sharp pain faded, and the edges of the wound slowly drew closed. The dislocated bone remained unset, but his arm was stabilized for the time being. Chu Linger tore open ration packs and passed them to the others. The black-scaled flood dragon caught the scent, strained to lift its head, and swallowed 2 packs whole. It lowered itself back to the stone, breathing heavily, yet noticeably more stable than before. Once he caught his breath, Bai Xiaochuan turned toward the second chest. Su Qinghan split its lock open with another sword strike. The chest was filled with crystal cores the size of infant fists. Bronze-grade cores. Hundreds of them in total. The tournament committee truly spared no expense. Bai Xiaochuan grabbed a handful and tossed them before the black-scaled flood dragon. The dragon opened its jaws and swallowed them, crunching the crystals between its teeth. As the cores dissolved, the dullness faded from its black scales little by little. Bai Xiaochuan stopped feeding it. This area was far too strange. They needed to conserve resources. The final chest was much smaller than the other 2. It was solid black, with no visible lock, only a nearly worn red seal stretching across its surface. Faint markings were printed along the seal's edge. Recovered specimen, hazard classification. Su Qinghan raised her sword and struck down hard. Clang. Sparks erupted. Not a single scratch appeared on the black chest. The recoil traveled up the sword hilt, numbing Su Qinghan's hand and nearly disarming her. It's incredibly tough. Bai Xiaochuan frowned and stretched out a hand to touch the chest surface. The moment his fingertips made contact, bone-deep cold washed over him. His system panel flickered frantically. Warning: high-grade energy overflow detected. Target: incomplete Sword Dao Origin Crystal. Status: extremely unstable. Sword Dao Origin. A heavy feeling settled in Bai Xiaochuan's heart. How could something like this be labeled a hazardous specimen by the organizing committee and locked away inside the underground supply station? Before he could speak, the semi-transparent gel mass at Su Qinghan's feet suddenly sprang upward. The sword chi slime. It usually moved sluggishly, blowing bubbles as if half asleep. Yet now, it trembled violently all over its body, like a beast that had caught the scent of blood. Get back! Su Qinghan shouted sharply. The slime paid no heed. Poochie! It crashed into the black crate, its soft gelatinous body spreading out instantly to wrap tightly around the container. What is it doing? Chu Linger stepped backward. Crack! A fissure was corroded into the surface of the black crate. Frigid air billowed out from the crack. Goosebumps instantly rose on Bai Xiaochuan's back of the hand. The dark green moss covering the rock walls quickly frosted over, and even the longsword in Su Qinghan's grasp hummed and vibrated. The slime wriggled through the crack and slipped inside. Don't swallow it. Bai Xiaochuan's expression turned grim. Boom. The black crate shattered apart. A fist-sized black crystal hovered midair. Its edges were jagged and incomplete, yet countless tiny sword shadows seemed sealed within it. Just a single glance stung the eyes sharply. The sword chi slime widened the opening at the center of its body. It swallowed the crystal in one gulp. No, it was already too late. The moment the crystal went down, the slime's translucent body rapidly turned jet black. It swelled outward, sprouting countless sharp protrusions. Violent sword chi rampaged inside its form, threatening to tear it apart from within. SSSHD. The first strand of sword chi pierced the gel and shot toward the rock wall. A gash half a foot deep was carved into the solid bluestone. Then came the second, the third. More streams of sword chi burst forth from the slime, crisscrossing to sweep across the entire underground supply station. It can't hold on much longer. Bai Xiaochuan's voice sank. Su Qinghan did not hesitate for a second, lunging forward to shield Bai Xiaochuan and Chu Ling. The next instant, the entire underground cavern transformed into a whirling grinder of sword chi. The underground cavern had become the eye of the storm. After the sword chi slime swallowed the incomplete crystal of Sword Dao origin, its translucent body darkened at a frantic pace, as if a whole bucket of ink had been poured into it. In the blink of an eye, it ballooned into a half-human-tall black gelatinous sphere. SSSHD. A stream of sword chi swept outward. The remains of the cave rock spider on the ground were grazed by the attack. Its bronze tier exoskeleton did not endure even half a second before disintegrating into fine ash. Roar! The black-scaled flood dragon positioned itself in front of the three. Its foreclaws dug firmly into the stone slabs, its spine coiled taut. It unfurled its amethyst barrier, and dense streams of sword chi slammed against the crystal surface, sending sparks streaming downwards. Crack! A thin fracture split the center of the barrier. In the next second, the cracks spread rapidly, webbing across the entire amethyst shield. The flood dragon let out a low growl. Scales along its neck flipped upward from the impact, and black blood seeped out between them. It had only just absorbed a crystal core, with no time to recover its strength. It would not sustain this level of sword chi onslaught for long. Standing behind the flood dragon, Su Qinghan ignored the failing barrier. She lowered her gaze, staring at the back of her left hand. The silver sword-shaped rune there flashed frantically. Ice blue patterns burned crimson, like a branding iron pressed against her skin. The stench of burning flesh drifted through the air, the skin surrounding the rune splitting and oozing beads of blood. Worse still was the contract backlash. The untamed Sword Dao origin inside the slime surged backward through their mental link and flooded into her sea of consciousness. Su Qinghan stifled a groan and staggered half a step. Blood trickled from the corner of her mouth and splattered onto her black combat uniform. It's lost control. Her voice came out hoarse. Bai Xiaochuan leaned against the rock wall, his left shoulder throbbing with dull pain, his complexion equally grim. Chu Linger clutched a packet of toxic powder at his side. The shadow venom spider perched on her shoulder, all 8 bladed legs extended, yet unable to find an opening to strike. The black gelatinous mass continued expanding. With every undulation, The sword chi filling the cavern grew more chaotic. If this continued, it would rupture outright. None of them would survive. Su Qinghan raised her right hand, gripping her sword backward. She made no hesitation. I will force it back into the contract space first. Her gaze locked onto the crimson rune on her hand as she spoke rapidly. After that, I will sever this hand. Chu Linger's face paled. Su Qinghan's eyes remained steady. Once the contract rune is severed, the beast tamer space will seal completely. Even if it detonates inside, the blast cannot reach you. It was the only solution she could calculate. Recall the rampaging slime. Then sever her own contract hand with her own blade. Sacrifice one arm to grant survival to the two others and their contracted beasts. She twisted the sword, positioning the frigid blade above her left wrist. Su Qinghan, have you lost your mind? Bai Xiaochuan jerked his head upward. His left shoulder was nearly useless, yet he threw himself forward away from the rock wall. Just as the sword blade descended, slap, he seized the blade with his right hand. SSSS. His palm was sliced open on the spot. Blood flowed down the sword's spine, dripping onto the toes of Su Qinghan's boots. Su Qinghan's pupils shrank. She tried to pull the sword free, fearful the sharp edge would slice off Bai Xiaochuan's fingers, and forced herself to halt her momentum. Let go, she snapped, suppressed urgency thick in her tone. It absorbed sword Dao origin. A black iron tier body cannot withstand it. If I do not sever the contract, the backlash will shatter my sea of consciousness, and we will all die regardless. Who said it cannot endure? Pain flared hotly across Bai Xiaochuan's palm, yet his grip tightened further. Before his eyes, a system panel flickered nonstop. Target, sword chi slime. Status, genetic restructuring in progress. Warning, energy extremely violent. Target possesses unlimited potential, forcibly accommodating a high-order rule. Unlimited potential. Bai Xiaochuan saw those words clearly. He stared at Su Qinghan and gritted his teeth. My cheat ability is barely more outrageous than it. It isn't going to die here. Put the sword down. Shrill sword chimes echoed constantly in Su Qinghan's ears. Blood streaked outward from the rune on her left hand. No one had ever confronted her this directly before, and anger constricted her chest. You don't understand a thing. That is sword Dao origin, not an ordinary crystal core. It is merely a black iron tier slime. Crack. Another section of the flood dragon's barrier split apart. A stream of sword chi slipped through the breach and grazed Bai Xiaochuan's cheek. Several strands of black hair drifted downward, and a thin line of blood appeared on his face. Not far away, the black slime had expanded to its absolute limit. Dense sharp spines jutted from its surface, resembling a black spiked sphere moments from bursting. There is no more time. Move aside. Su Qinghan's gaze turned sharp. She bent her right leg, preparing to shove Bai Xiaochuan away. Bai Xiaochuan knew no grappling techniques. He had no way to subdue the head of the swordsmanship division. But he understood one truth. That blade must not fall today. He suddenly released the sword and charged forward. Bang! Caught off guard, Su Qinghan stumbled and fell backward. The two crashed heavily onto the cold bluestone floor. Using his functional right hand, Bai Xiaochuan pinned her wrist holding the sword, forcing the blade aside. He leaned over her, using his weight to hold her firmly in place. Watch closely. Bai Xiaochuan leaned down and shouted at her. I risked nearly everything to lead you two safely in here. I won't stand by and watch you sacrifice yourself. Su Qinghan froze completely. Being restrained on the ground by another person left her silver hair spread across the stone. For the first time, blankness flickered within her ice-blue eyes. They were far too close. Close enough for her to feel his hurried, breathing brush against her cheek. You? Su Qinghan's ears flushed red. She struggled slightly. Bai Xiaochuan, get off me at once. Promise me you won't cut off your hand first. Let me go. Promise you won't harm yourself. Chu Linger stood to the side, anxiety coloring her cheeks. This was hardly the moment for such a standoff. Yet seeing blood continuously dripping from Bai Xiaochuan's palm, she could not bring herself to reproach him. She gripped her medicinal jar tightly, her voice trembling. Both of you, look at the slime. Whoom! A shrill howl pierced into everyone's minds. Beyond the barrier, the sword chi slime suddenly froze mid-air. Its overinflated body came to an eerie standstill for a split second. Then boom. The black gelatinous mass exploded. Destructive Oblivion's sword light expanded like a black sun erupting in the cavern's center, surging forward toward the three of them. There was no spray of bodily tissue. The shattered black crystal dust hung suspended in mid-air, held motionless as if gripped by an invisible hand. The black sun did not consume them. The Oblivion sword light halted abruptly half an inch before colliding with the amethyst barrier. A pinpoint of white light ignited deep within the black dust. The next instant, all the crystal dust surged backward in a violent vortex, like water rushing into a leviathan's maw. Black, silver-white, and ink-colored flecks of light converged frantically, finally condensing into a fist-sized blob of translucent gel that plopped onto the blue stone. It was smaller than it had originally been. No longer a limp, white mass of liquid. Its entire body shimmered with a faint ink-black hue. Deep within the gel, a tiny silver-white sword drifted slowly, akin to a minuscule sword-shaped fish. Su Qinghan stood rigid. The nearly scorched sword-shaped rune on the back of her hand abruptly turned cool. A stream of exceptionally pure sword chi flowed into her body through the contract bond. The sea of consciousness that had been churned into chaos by backlash felt cleansed by frigid ice. Her depleted sword chi surged rapidly, growing even more refined than before. Before Bai Xiaochuan's eyes, a system panel popped up. Target, Void Sword Spirit Infant Stage. Combat Tier, 3-star Silver. Growth Talent, SS Rank. Bloodline Race, Mutant Species. Formed when ordinary sword chi slime fused with incomplete sword Dao origin, completing bloodline reconstruction. Abilities, Void Cleaving Bubble, Indestructible Sword Body. Bai Xiaochuan stared at the panel, lost for words for a long moment. A 2-star black iron slime had swallowed a fragment of origin power and directly advanced to 3-star silver. On the ground, the Void Sword Spirit wriggled twice. A small opening pushed open at its center. Puffed. A transparent bubble floated outward. It drifted slowly, wreathed in an almost invisible strand of silver sword light. It drifted toward the damaged gray metal crate not far away. Pop! The bubble burst. There was no deafening crash, no shockwave. A section of the metal crate, the bluestone beneath it, and half the rock pillar behind vanished simultaneously. The cut was terrifyingly smooth. It was as if that sliver of space had never existed at all. Chu Linger reflexively hugged the shadow venom spider on her shoulder, her almond eyes wide open. The black-scaled flood dragon lifted its head, its dark gold vertical pupils fixed on the void cut, emitting a low rumble from its throat. A chill ran down Bai Xiaochuan's spine. If that bubble had drifted toward any of them just now? As this thought crossed his mind, he suddenly registered their current position. Bai Xiaochuan snapped out of his daze. Whoa! He scrambled backward as if burned. The sudden movement pulled at his injured left shoulder, sending a wave of agony across his face as he hastily retreated to lean against the wall. That was tactical restraint. I only acted to stop you from harming yourself, nothing more. Su Qinghan slowly sat upright. She first tidied her uniform, then brushed her scattered silver hair behind her shoulders. Finally, she took a deep breath and slid her sword back into its sheath. Do not do that again. Her tone remained icy. Chu Linger recovered her senses and hurried over to Bai Xiaochuan with her medicinal jar. Stay still. She knelt down, carefully unwrapping the frayed bandages, dipping her fingertips in medicinal paste. She gently tended to the edges of his wound. Bai Xiaochuan winced from the pain but did not pull away. Su Qinghan walked toward the space sliced open by the bubble. Moss originally covered the rock wall behind the gray metal crate. When the bubble swept past, a semicircular crack was carved silently into the stone. What lay beyond the crack was not bedrock, an alloy door embedded within the mountain. Thick rust coated its surface, and broken chains hung along its edges. The organizing committee's emblem of 3 crossed swords had worn blurry with the passage of years. A secret passage. Su Qinghan rested a hand on the door. Bai Xiaochuan stood with difficulty despite his shoulder pain and glanced over. This place is truly layered like nested boxes. A secret passage hidden beneath a supply station. Does the organizing committee want everyone to uncover their secrets? Su Qinghan did not reply. She drew her sword, slid the blade into the sliced gap, and twisted her wrist. Creak. The rust-locked alloy door slid slowly inward. Stale, frigid air washed over them. Beyond lay a short, downward-sloping corridor lined with long extinguished light tubes. Thick dust blanketed the ground, and faint scattered footprints were visible within the grime. It had stood abandoned for ages, yet it was not completely untouched. Chu Linger secured her medicine jar. The shadow venom spider leaped from her shoulder and crept along the wall into the darkness first. The void sword spirit bounced sluggishly to Su Qinghan's boot, the tiny sword within its gel form trembling gently. Stay close, Su Qinghan instructed. The 3 proceeded down the corridor. It terminated in an observation room less than 20 square meters in size. Shattered monitoring screens lined the walls, furniture overturned everywhere. Moldy record books littered the corners, their pages warped by dampness. Bai Xiaochuan flipped open the topmost volume. Only a single line, repeatedly crossed out in red ink, marked the first page. Northwest Resource Camp, third batch of screening specimens. Expected full convergence within 2 days. His fingers paused. Chu Linger leaned in to look as well. Tacked to the center wall of the observation room was an aged map of the deserted island. 5 red circles marked its surface: east, south, west, north, and the island's center. Beside every red circle was the identical notation, screening note. Su Qinghan retrieved an experiment record tucked beneath the map. The paper edges were charred, yet the writing remained legible. Utilize resource camps as lure points to boost the convergence rate of high-potential specimens. Once specimen combat power and crystal reserves reach the threshold, initiate the second round screening. The rest of the document had been violently torn away. Silence settled over the observation room. Wind drifted through the secret passage outside, stirring the loose pages. Bai Xiaochuan stared at the 5 red circles, the faint smile fading from his face. Our prior suspicions were confirmed. This deserted island was never an examination ground. The organizing committee had herded students into resource camps, forcing them to compete for crystal cores, hunt strange beasts, and climb over one another. What they would become after screening was never written in these fragmented records. Su Qinghan flipped to the final page of the record book. A route map was tucked there. 1 red circle in the northwest direction was heavily highlighted. Bai Xiaochuan glanced toward the exit of the secret passage. He breathed out slowly. We have to grow stronger. After half an hour of rest, Bai Xiaochuan had recovered somewhat. Leaning against the rock wall, he looked down at the dozing black-scaled flood dragon. A system panel materialized before him. Target: black-scaled flood dragon infant stage. Combat tier: 9-star bronze peak. Growth talent: S rank. Fused traits: thorn retaliation, absolute toxin purple, absolute penetration gold. Derived abilities: amethyst barrier, toxin mist diffusion, dragon might suppression, piercing breath. Bai Xiaochuan reached out and stroked its cold, rigid scales. This beast had fought alongside him through countless dangers. Its original small form as a wood lizard was long gone. Its 7 to 8 meter long serpentine body stretched across the ground. And even while asleep, every exhalation carried a menacing aura. Calling you a wood lizard now feels like an insult to dragons. Bai Xiaochuan stroked his chin, deep in thought. I need to give you a more imposing name. The flood dragon cracked open one dark gold vertical pupil and huffed a cloud of white vapor from its nostrils, seemingly waiting expectantly. Bai Xiaochuan slapped his thigh. You shall be called Lao He from now on. A moment of dead silence hung in the air. The flood dragon stiffened all over. It slowly twisted its head away, and its massive tail slammed onto the ground. Boom! A slab of bluestone shattered into fragments. A dignified S-rank flood dragon, saddled with a name like Lao He? It sounded no different from a guard dog's name from a rural village. Tisk, someone's got a temper. Bai Xiaochuan coughed and quickly revised his choice. Very well, how about He Yuan? Black Abyss, anyone who hears it will know you are not to be trifled with. The flood dragon fell silent for a moment. It turned its massive head back and rubbed its snout against Bai Xiaochuan's palm. It had reluctantly accepted the name. He Yuan. Bai Xiaochuan smiled. Stick with me, and together we will stand against every foe. He Yuan let out a low rumble and tapped its tail lightly against the stone. Chu Linger stowed her medicinal jar and returned the shadow venom spider to her sleeve. She looked up toward Bai Xiaochuan, hesitation fading from her almond eyes. Where do we head next? We cannot stay here any longer. Su Qinghan tightened her grip on her sword hilt. The underground supply station held the organizing committee's screening documents. They now knew far too many secrets. Yet Bai Xiaochuan scratched his cheek, his gaze drifting aside as he muttered quietly. We're going to look for an ally we previously encountered. Chu Linger's fingertips tightened abruptly, creasing the hem of her clothes. She lowered her gaze and said nothing. Su Qinghan turned her head, her ice-blue eyes sweeping over him. That gaze was as if she were looking at a block of wood fit only to be chopped for firewood. Bai Xiaochuan. Her tone was frigid. At a moment of life and death, is that all your mind can think of? No, listen to me. A chill ran down Bai Xiaochuan's spine. He could hardly admit he needed to seek out targets with outstanding appearances to harvest system traits. Any way he framed it, it would sound like he was making excuses for inappropriate conduct. He forced himself to cobble together an explanation. What I mean is, people with high aptitude and formidable strength will most likely gather at large camps. The tournament organizers need to screen candidates, so they will keep a close watch on those locations. He paused, his voice softening slightly. We need to find resources, locate other survivors, and figure out their next move. Heading to the camps is far more sensible than wandering aimlessly across this deserted island. Chu Linger lifted her head and shot him a glance. Su Qinghan neither confirmed nor denied his words. She simply slid her sword back into its sheath. It had better be the truth. Bai Xiaochuan nodded at once. Absolutely. As for the note about attractive individuals, that was merely a secondary characteristic of his strategic objectives. Yes, purely secondary. The three crept outward through a ventilation passage on the far side of the underground supply station. The tunnel spiraled upward, lined with damp gravel beneath their feet. The mildew stench in the air slowly faded, replaced by the mingled scent of soil, foliage, and rainwater. Half an hour later, a sliver of daylight finally appeared ahead, along with the howl of wind. Whoosh! Wind rushed down from the exit, carrying a faint tang of blood. Then boom! An explosion echoed outside. The clatter of metal, the howls of beasts, and the sharp clash of close-quarters combat intertwined, reverberating through the mountain wall and into the tunnel. Su Qinghan halted and pressed herself against the rock face. There are people out there. Bai Xiaochuan ducked low, brushed aside the toxic vines hanging over the exit, and cautiously poked his head out. Beneath them stretched a vast canyon. Steep cliffs rose on either side, fissures dotted with eerie blue luminescent plants. Cold light spread across the stone walls, bathing the valley floor like a battlefield shrouded in night. At the bottom of the canyon, 5 beast wardens clad in silver uniforms rode swift gale wolves, stationed on both flanks. The gale wolves hunched low, claws scraping across stone, sealing off every escape route from the valley. Trapped at the center of the encirclement stood a girl wielding twin blades. She wore tattered black battle gear, a gash torn open on her shoulder by wolf claws, blood streaming down her arm. Yet she showed no sign of retreat. A gale wolf lunged forward. The girl dodged sideways, crossing her twin blades to slash. The edge grazed the wolf's neck, sending droplets of blood flying. She stumbled upon landing, and another beast warden behind her raised a crossbow, aiming the bolt straight for her back. She resembled a leopard cornered with nowhere to run, covered in wounds, yet her eyes burned with ferocity. The instant Bai Xiaochuan caught sight of her profile, ding! A system chime resounded inside his mind. High fortune / high potential target detected. Appearance rating, 98. Latent trait, golden mythic grade, shadow clone. Notice, extraction requirement. Maintain continuous physical contact with the target for over 10 minutes. Bai Xiaochuan's breath caught. Color had drained from his face due to his injuries moments earlier, but he forced himself to rally. A golden mythic trait, shadow clone. An ability that creates duplicates would be invaluable for escaping, ambushing foes, luring enemies, or fighting large groups. What was more, they were being hunted across the entire island by the tournament organizers. It was as if someone had handed him a life-saving treasure directly. Bai Xiaochuan whipped his head around. Chu Linger and Su Qinghan were both staring at him. He forced a grin, momentarily forgetting the pain in his left shoulder. Work awaits us. Su Qinghan frowned, looking on with disdain. Try not to let your eagerness show so plainly. Down in the canyon, the crossbow bolt cut through the air, whistling sharply. The black-cloaked girl had just repelled one swift gale wolf and had yet to retract her blades. Her strength was spent, leaving her back wide open. The alloy bolt was less than 3 meters away from her spine. Bai Xiaochuan's pupils constricted. Stop that bolt. Before his voice faded, Su Qinghan had already moved. Her silver sword was only half drawn. Yet ice-blue sword energy surged forth first, embedding itself into the canyon wall. Sword spirit, sever. The void sword spirit sprang up from beside her boot. The pale ink-like gel contracted mid-air, expelling a transparent bubble wrapped in silvery sword light. The next moment, pop! The bubble burst. The gray alloy bolt, along with half a foot of surrounding air, vanished as if sliced away by an invisible blade. The black-cloaked girl spun around abruptly. All she saw were specks of fading ink-colored light drifting before her eyes. Cold sweat trickled down her nape beneath her collar. The 5 beast wardens mounted on swift gale wolves darkened simultaneously. The man holding the crossbow lifted his head and roared. Who's up there? Show yourself. Bai Xiaochuan drew a deep breath. Latent trait, golden mythic grade, shadow clone. Extraction requirement. Maintain continuous physical contact with the target for 10 minutes. Perfect for fleeing, laying ambushes, group combat, or baiting enemy abilities. The trouble was straightforward. Charging into an active battlefield and maintaining uninterrupted physical contact with a lethal, twin-blade wielding stranger for 10 minutes? Bai Xiaochuan's scalp tingled. Back at school, He would stammer, just borrowing an eraser from a girl. Now he needed to rush into combat and say something along the lines of, "Hey, can I stay in physical contact with you for 10 minutes while I help you fight?" If he shouted that, Su Qinghan would cleave his skull open without hesitation. By Xiaochuan. Chu Linger noticed his shifting expression and called out softly. Su Qinghan rested one hand on her sword hilt and glanced sideways. Are we saving her or not? We are. Absolutely. Fortune favors the bold. Bai Xiaochuan steeled his resolve, suppressing his embarrassment and nervousness and forcing a fierce scowl onto his face. Risk it all. If he was bold enough, his awkwardness would not hold him back. He stepped out from behind the toxic vines and jumped onto a protruding rock at the canyon's edge. Looking down from his high vantage point, he pointed toward the twin-blade wielder in the valley. You down there with the twin blades. Bai Xiaochuan projected his voice, his shout echoing across the canyon. Don't move. Hold your hands out. The black, cloaked girl froze. The 5 beast wardens froze as well. Su Qinghan's grip on her sword stiffened, staring at him as if he had lost his mind. Do you hear me? Stretch your hands forward. Bai Xiaochuan's cheeks burned fiercely, yet words spilled from his mouth faster than he could think. You are surrounded. Only my ancestral secret art can save you right now. But my technique relies on channeling power through palm meridians. We must hold hands continuously for 10 minutes. Miss even 1 second, and those wolves will tear you to shreds today. Wind swept through the canyon. Silence hung heavy. The black-cloaked girl stared blankly upward at the youth with bandages wrapped around his left shoulder. Red-faced, yet delivering absurd claims with complete sincerity. Had this man escaped from an asylum? Seeking death. The crossbow-wielding beast warden recovered first, his face livid. A handful of student outsiders dare interfere in the organizer's affairs. He waved an arm. Tear them apart. 2 swift gale wolves lifted their heads and howled. Their claws scrambled across the cliff, sending gravel flying. 2 gray shadows charged toward Bai Xiaochuan's group from left and right. Hey Yuan move. Bai Xiaochuan spun and ran. He grabbed Chu Linger's wrist and slid down the steep slope. A whoa! He Yuan raised its head behind them. The imposing aura of an S-class flood dragon crashed outward. The 2 gale wolves froze mid-leap, instinctive fear rising in their eyes. A split second later, the 8-meter-long dragon body crashed through protruding rock. Its thick tail slammed down from above. Boom! The leading swift gale wolf did not even have time to howl. Its spine snapped instantly, and it crashed back to the valley floor like a tattered sack. The second gale wolf tried to swerve away. Su Qinghan stepped forward. Her silver sword cleared its sheath. The void sword spirit twisted into a wisp of silvery blade light, coiling along the edge. Slash. Swoosh. A 3-meter-long streak of ink-black sword light cut across the canyon. The gale wolf's body split cleanly in 2. Before blood could hit the ground, it was shredded into mist by the sword energy. Down in the valley, the lead beast warden's expression turned grave. An S-class flood dragon. He locked eyes on Heiyuan, shock swiftly giving way to greed. You 3 students the Platinum Beast Wardens are hunting. Form up. Deploy capture nets. Nobody leaves here alive. Neither humans nor the dragon. The remaining 3 beast wardens pulled gray metal cylinders from their waists simultaneously. Faint blue electricity sparked at the cylinder tips. Bai Xiaochuan kept running, sliding down the gravel toward the valley bottom. You think you can seize my dragon? He shouted over his shoulder. Linger blocked their vision. Chu Linger nodded. She raised her wrist, and the shadow venom spider shot forth. 8 crystal purple blade, like legs unfurled in the wind. Hiss! Thick clouds of purple-black venom mist billowed from its abdomen. The fog rolled close to the ground, then surged upward on valley wind, forming a wall bearing down on the beast wardens. Their field of vision vanished in an instant. Spread out. The leader's roar echoed from within the mist. Seizing that moment of obscured sight, Bai Xiaochuan charged straight to the black, cloaked girl's side. The girl tightened her grip on her blades and stepped back warily. What exactly do you want? To save your life and complete the power-channeling ritual. Bai Xiaochuan was sweating profusely. Without further hesitation, he lunged forward. The girl knit her brows. This youth's left shoulder was covered in fresh blood, and the first thing he did upon reaching her was try to grasp her hand. She lifted the back of her right blade, ready to knock the strange youth unconscious. But Bai Xiaochuan closed the distance in an instant. She saw his torn bandages and the desperate urgency burning in his eyes. The blade hesitated for a heartbeat. Slap! Bai Xiaochuan's uninjured right hand clamped firmly around her left wrist. Her skin felt cold beneath his grasp. He could feel taut muscle beneath her slender wrist bones. Contact established. Target, Yi Qingying. Golden mythic trait, shadow clone, extraction initiated. 1. Countdown, 9 minutes 59 seconds. The system notification echoed in his mind. Bai Xiaochuan finally let out a breath. The very next instant, above the venom mist, 3 streaks of faint blue electricity flared to life. Crackle. 3 giant alloy capture nets tore through the mist, descending from the sky. Electric arcs crackled across the mesh, bathing the canyon in eerie blue light. They targeted He Yuan, and also covered by Xiaochuan and Yi Qingying, whose hands were now joined. The alloy nets whistled downward, enclosing all escape routes, electric arcs crackling across the mesh. Dodge! Yi Qingying's expression shifted. She lifted her short blade upward, aiming to slice the net apart. Don't strike it with your blade. Bai Xiaochuan dragged her wrist backward. It's conductive alloy. They rolled sideways across the stone ground in unison. Boom. The alloy capture net crashed onto the spot where they had stood moments earlier, electric currents racing across the flagstones. Black scorch marks spread instantly, gravel cracking from the intense heat. Yi Qingying slammed her back against a protruding boulder and let out a muted groan. Bai Xiaochuan rolled and positioned himself in front of her. His right hand still maintained a tight grip on her left wrist, refusing to let go. You're out of your mind. Yi Qingying winced, her fair cheeks flushing. Let go. I can fight on my own. Fight what? Bai Xiaochuan gritted his teeth and tugged her half a step behind him. Your vitality is nearly exhausted. If you charge again, you'll collapse before landing a single strike. Don't move. His face burned hot, yet he forced a stern tone. This is an ancestral secret ritual. If contact is broken, all progress is lost. Before his eyes, the progress bar crept upward slowly. Shadow clone extraction progress. 3. Bai Xiaochuan's eyelids twitched. 10 minutes. Trapped inside this canyon by 5 platinum-ranked beast wardens, forced to survive long enough. This system certainly knew how to place him under maximum pressure. Brat, let's see how many times you can evade. From beyond the venom mist, the lead beast warden waved his arm. 2 massive swift gale wolves burst through the fog, bared fangs glinting, charging toward the pair on the ground. The stench of beast breath washed over them. He Yuan, hold them off. Bai Xiaochuan shouted without turning his head. Boom. Golden dragon breath surged from the side, striking the leading gale wolf head-on. The blast shook the canyon. The beast did not even have time to howl before half its body exploded into flesh and fragments. He Yuan's serpentine bulk positioned itself before Bai Xiaochuan. Its unhealed wound along the neck split open once more, black blood dripping from its scales. Yet its dark, golden vertical pupils remained locked firmly on the wolf pack. Roar. Dragon pressure crashed down. The remaining gale wolf stiffened, claws gouging deep furrows into stone, unable to pounce immediately. Su Qinghan, strike their left flank. Bai Xiaochuan kept hold of Yi Qingying while issuing quick commands. Prevent them from re-establishing a full encirclement. Understood. From the cliff face, Su Qinghan leaped downward across loose gravel. Silver hair cut a cold arc through the air. Her sword was only partially drawn. Ice blue sword energy landed first, driving into the rock between the left side wolves and the beast wardens. Sword spirit, sever. The void sword spirit bounced beside her shoulder. A transparent bubble wrapped in silvery sword light drifted out and landed on the beast warden's retreat path. Pop. The bubble burst. A section of stone ground along with half the cliff face vanished without a sound. The fracture was unervingly smooth. 2 beast wardens pulled their gale wolves to a halt, nearly tumbling into the fissure with their mounts. Chu Linger, support He Yuan. Got it. Chu Linger stood on higher ground and hurled pouches of venom powder downward. Purple-black dust scattered through the air, drifting toward the wolf pack atop the valley winds. The shadow venom spider launched from her sleeve. A streak of purple-black flashed past one gale wolf's foreleg. As soon as the wolf lifted its paw, its body lurched violently. Foam frothed from its jaws, and it crashed heavily to the ground. Even a tiny trace of that lethal venom was enough to cripple a bronze tier gale wolf. Still, the beast warden's formation did not fully collapse. For the moment, the battlefield settled into a tense stalemate. Extraction progress, 25. Time remaining, 7 minutes 30 seconds. Yi Qingying lay among the gravel, breathing unevenly. She watched the battle unfolding before her, her wariness slowly turning to astonishment. A flood dragon holding the front line, absorbing the wolves' assaults. A venom spider targeting limbs, crippling foes on contact. And that strange slime capable of slicing through empty air itself. What kind of formidable squad was this? You. She looked toward Bai Xiaochuan, who sat close beside her. Dirt and blood streaked his face. Sweat dripped from his forehead into his eyes. He only wiped it away roughly. Yet the right hand gripping her wrist remained as unyielding as iron. "Let me go first." Yi Qingying lowered her voice. Bai Xiaochuan did not glance at her. "Let go? Not a chance." He gasped for breath, speaking before he could filter his words. "I went all out to secure this ritual to save you. If you ask me to release you now, you're disrespecting everything I'm risking." Yi Qingying was left speechless. She had never met anyone quite like him. Never had she seen someone frame such bizarre conduct so righteously, all while genuinely risking his life to protect her. Useless trash. From behind the venom mist, the lead beast warden seethed with rage. He watched his broken formation, then glanced at Heian standing guard over by Xiaochuan, fury blazing in his eyes. "Take out the beast tamer first. Once the flood dragon loses its contractor, it's nothing more than a beast waiting to be slaughtered." He drew his short blade and sliced open his left palm. Blood dripped onto the head of the 3-meter-tall giant wolf beside him. Blood oath activation. Berserk transformation. The giant wolf let out a miserable howl. Bones cracked repeatedly beneath its skin. Its body swelled rapidly, crimson fur spreading along its spine, black fluid trickling from its eye sockets. A silver tear ferocious aura surged forth, tearing through the venom mist. Berserk bloodthirst wolf. Combat tier, silver 1 star. Kill him. The leader pointed his blade straight at Bai Xiaochuan. The berserk bloodthirst wolf planted its front paws. Boom. Flagstones shattered beneath it. It did not charge directly at He Yuan. Instead, it drew a crimson streak across the cliff, circling around the front line. The shadow venom spider leaped to intercept, but the wolf had already darted outside the range of the venom mist before it could strike. He Yuan twisted its body to rush to the rescue. Yet its injuries slowed it, and the flood dragon could only turn halfway. The berserk bloodthirst wolf swooped down from the rear flank. Bai Xiaochuan. Chu Linger's face paled. Su Qinghan raised her sword, but she was already too far away to intervene in time. Yi Qingying's pupils shrank. She flipped her right short blade upward, ready to intercept the wolf's claw aimed at Bai Xiaochuan. But Bai Xiaochuan kept hold of her and did not retreat. It was not that he refused to move. He could not. Extraction progress, 70. Time remaining, 3 minutes 0 seconds. The berserk bloodthirst wolf's claws tore through the wind. Less than half a meter separated them from Bai Xiaochuan's back. It sank its fangs into the neck of the berserk wolf, pressing down with its sturdy forepaws to pin the silver tear beast firmly to the ground. The berserk wolf thrashed wildly. Claws scraped against the black scales, sending sparks flying. The scabbed wound on Black Abyss's neck split open once more, black blood trickling down between its scales. White Xiaochuan did not turn his head. His right hand still gripped Yi Qingying's wrist, his gaze locked rigidly onto the system panel. Shadow clone extraction progress. 95 time remaining. 30 seconds. Yi Qingying lay amid the rubble. She watched White Xiaochuan standing before her to shield her. The bandages wrapped around the youth's left shoulder were soaked through with blood, and bone peeked out from his torn wound. His face turned ashen from agony, yet his right hand clung to her wrist as if welded in place, never loosening for a moment. She had grown up in a martial arts dojo. She had seen countless people use their companions as human shields, but she had never met such a reckless person willing to risk his life to complete his objective. "Let go." Yi Qingying's voice came out hoarse. "You will die." "Quiet." White Xiaochuan gritted his teeth, veins bulging on his forehead. "This secret art follows time, not circumstance. Until the 10 minutes are up, I cannot release you even if the sky collapses." Yi Qingying froze. The words sounded utterly improper, yet he spoke them with such solemn resolve. Tears stung her eyes, and the short blade in her right hand clattered to the ground. The next instant, she twisted her hand to clasp White Xiaochuan's palm. Her cool fingertips slotted between his fingers. Their hands pressed fully together. Shadow clone extraction progress. 99 time remaining, 5 seconds. Boom. Black Abyss was ultimately too severely injured. Tolerating the toxin raging through its body, the berserk wolf swiped one paw to hurl the flood dragon aside. Black Abyss crashed into the stone cliff, scales shattering. The dull impact shook the entire canyon. The berserk wolf shook off broken scales stuck to its neck. Its blood-red eyes moved past Black Abyss, locking onto White Xiaochuan. It pushed off with its hind legs. The massive wolf's body, reeking of blood, lunged for the second time. White Xiaochuan. Su Qinghan leaped down with her sword. But she was too far away. Countdown. 0 golden mythic tier trait. Shadow clone. Extraction successful. Violet gold radiance exploded inside White Xiaochuan's mind. Trait description, Shadow Clone. Splits shadow from the main body. Inherits part of the host's combat power and fused abilities. Duration depends on mental strength and the host's condition. White Xiaochuan jerked his head up. He released Yi Qingying's hand and pointed his right palm toward Black Abyss. Black Abyss, receive it. A streak of violet gold light burst from his palm and surged into Black Abyss's body. Black Abyss, collapsed beside the stone wall, shuddered violently. Blinding violet gold light seeped out from gaps between its black scales. A far fiercer dragon might than before swept across the whole canyon. Black Abyss raised its head high. A dragon roar boomed out. The next moment, the shadow beneath it stirred. The shadow on the ground churned like boiling water, stretching and swelling upward. In the blink of an eye, a shadow flood dragon the same size as Black Abyss separated itself from the main body shadow. Black-scaled flood dragon. Shadow clone inherits 80 of the main body's combat power. Inherited effects. Absolute piercing, absolute toxin. The berserk wolf's claws were already descending above White Xiaochuan's head. The shadow flood dragon moved. It possessed no physical form. It raced forward like a black streak torn free from the night. It passed straight through the berserk wolf's torso. Absolute piercing tore through flesh first. Violet-black toxin flooded its internal organs immediately after. Ill though, the berserk wolf let out a shrill wail midair. Strength drained from its giant frame. It sailed over White Xiaochuan and crashed into the pile of boulders behind. Crash. Stones scattered everywhere. The berserk wolf twitched twice, then fell completely still. At the far end of the canyon, the hunter captain's sneer froze on his face. He watched the silver one-star berserk bloodthirst wolf get slain in an instant. Then he saw the two flood dragons flanking White Xiaochuan, one on each side. His hand gripping the blade began to tremble. A clone? That's impossible. White Xiaochuan pushed himself upright using his knees. Agony in his left shoulder blurred his vision, yet a cold smirk tugged at his lips. Black Abyss, clear the field. The original Black Abyss opened its jaws wide. A dazzling golden, piercing breath roared forth. The shadow clone followed closely, spewing a vast cloud of violet-black toxic mist. Golden light cut through the mist. The mist wrapped around the golden radiance. The two forces intertwined into a storm of destruction, surging toward the three remaining hunters and two swift-gale wolves. Retreat! The hunter captain roared hoarsely, but it was already too late. The golden breath pierced their defenses. Violet-black toxin seeped in through every wound. The gale wolves collapsed before they could take a second step. The hunters' screams were cut short, swallowed by the storm. Several breaths later, silence returned to the canyon. Only charred wreckage and a few bronze crystal cores scattered among the rubble remained on the valley floor. The shadow clone circled once before sinking back beneath Black Abyss. The violet gold light emanating from Black Abyss dimmed. The crisis was over. White Xiaochuan's taut nerves unraveled, and his legs buckled at once. He lurched forward. Yi Qingying reacted instantly, propping him up by his right shoulder. How are you holding on? Concern edged her tone. White Xiaochuan leaned against her shoulder, catching the faint cool fragrance clinging to her clothes, mixed with the scent of blood. In the next second, a sense of awkwardness washed over him. Ahem. We should keep a proper distance. He pulled back abruptly. The movement ripped open his shoulder wound. White Xiaochuan gasped sharply and slid down onto the ground. Yi Qingying stood there stunned. He had refused to let go of her a moment ago. Now he shied away just from being supported? What was wrong with this person? Su Qinghan sheathed her sword and walked over, casting a cold glance at White Xiaochuan. Serves you right. Chu Linger hurried forward. She lifted the blood-soaked bandage covering White Xiaochuan's shoulder. Her fingers trembled slightly, yet she forced herself steady. The wound cut deep enough to expose bone. Ordinary medicinal herbs could not stop the injury. It's no good. Chu Linger looked up, her face pale. He needs suturing immediately. Yi Qingying picked up her twin blades and slid them back into her waist sheaths. Follow me. She looked at the three others, her gaze settling finally on White Xiaochuan. I'm a clinical surgery student from the medical school. I have a hidden shelter fully equipped with surgical supplies. White Xiaochuan winced continuously from the pain, but still asked, is it truly safe? The competition committee won't find us for now. Yi Qingying paused briefly. It's 3 kilometers away. Black Abyss can carry you there. Then what are we waiting for? White Xiaochuan hauled himself upright, grabbing onto Black Abyss's scales. Cold sweat beat at his forehead from the pain. He gritted his teeth and clambered onto the flood dragon's back. I can't walk far, so Old Black gets to give me a ride. Black Abyss let out a low growl. This time, it did not lash its tail. Chu Linger quickly pressed medical gel to seal his wound before re-wrapping fresh bandages tightly. Yi Qingying oriented herself and led the group out of the canyon. Everyone recalled their contracted beasts. They followed fissures along the canyon edge and ventured into the dense misty rainforest. The rainforest was thick with dampness. White mist drifted low across the ground, and dry leaves crinkled softly underfoot. After traveling 3 kilometers, Yi Qingying, leading the way, suddenly halted. She rested a hand on her blade hilt and lowered her stance. White Xiaochuan hunched on Black Abyss's back and forced his eyes open. Chaotic footsteps echoed from within the mist ahead. More than one person was approaching. Moments afterward, a teasing male voice cut through the white fog. Well, isn't this the ice beauty of our medical faculty? Yi Qingying, our department's famous beauty. Several figures stepped slowly into view. The young man at the front wore a neat outer uniform issued by the competition committee. He twirled an alloy dagger between his fingers, a bronze badge on his chest glinting coldly within the mist. Behind him stood a massive blazing flame tiger. Sparks spilled out between its claws with every step it took. When Yi Qingying recognized the newcomer, her expression darkened instantly. Chunze,